Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if neglected Naruto wakes up Minato from his grave part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. In the middle of a dark forest, a massive, chakra-infused paw thundered into the ground. The earth trembled in a 10-kilometer radius. Red tails whipped through the air, throwing immense cyclones tearing through the woods, uprooting even the largest trees from their holdings. Kurama was on the run. Dead shinobi littered the trail of destruction behind him. Having been trapped for nearly 100 years, the Ninetales' moment of freedom would have been an occasion to celebrate if it weren't so ruined by having his mind and body enslaved to the damnable Uchiha and its thrice-accursed Sharingan. The fox grit its teeth in anger. I'm gonna wipe out that shitty clan and their shitty eyes. He could sense hundreds of shinobi coming toward him from the direction of Konoha. In fact, the first wave was about to reach him at jutsu distance. They probably wanted to capture and steal him back into the Uzumaki girl's body. Not a chance. For all the fox's overwhelming power and stature, the pursuing shinobi did not falter. Leaping high into the air and bouncing off trees and debris with chakra-supported balance, the ninja managed to avoid the worst of the otherwise devastating seismic upheavals. Even the powerful cyclones sent to impede them were simply redirected by exceptional wind jutsu users. It appeared this particular squad was a lot stronger than the others must be and be. He could sense Kushina's lover from among them. Thoughts of the redhead's sheer anguish and sorrow at the sight of a very dead Namikaze Minato flashed through the fox's mind. Kurama grinned. Come if you dare, roared the legendary fox. Its voice thundered all the way back into the distant village. Almost all the villagers, civilian and ninja alike, trembled at its power. 8 kilometers from the village, the fourth Hokage and his squad were about to reach the slow-moving Ninetales. If it weren't for its lumbering size, the ninja would never have been able to outpace this beast of seemingly limitless chakra. As they reached the eye of the massive storm of devastation, the Hokage signaled the squad to stop. For the second time since they'd begun the chase, the fourth turned to his wife who was being carried on the back of an ox-masked Anbu. We're about to approach the Ninetales. At such close proximity, I'm not sure even our best could fend off its offensive prowess. Please, Kushina, turn back. Still weak from childbirth, Kushina shook her head lightly. I've known the Ninetales for nearly 20 years now. If anyone can calm its fury and mitigate the damage it could do to the world, it's me. We've already discussed this, Minato. For the safety of our village and all the villages and people of this world, the Ninetales must be sealed, and he must be stopped. The Ninetales is essential to this process. I am essential to this process. I must go. Besides, I want to stay with you as long as possible for these last moments we have together. Minato looked away. He spoke quietly. If anything were to happen to you, I know. It can't be helped. The redhead uttered softly. The fourth Hokage suddenly shook his head and turned to the waiting fox with renewed determination. Then he turned to the old third Hokage who was standing with them. Hiruzen. You know what we are about to do. Make sure that my son is remembered as a hero and not feared and hated for being a Jinchuriki. The god of shinobi nodded. I shall. Minato bowed his head. That's all I ask? Turning to his squad, he nodded. You know what to do. The squad spoke in unison. Yes, Hokage-sama. Up half a kilometer ahead, the Ninetales could be seen looking toward the squad's direction. Its powerful ears had managed to pick up the exchange happening before it. With its curiosity piqued, the fox had temporarily stopped its assault to listen to what the fourth Hokage had to say to its former jailer. Within a matter of seconds, the squad stood before the indomitable fox. Kurama's grin was maddening. You aren't just going to let me go, are you? No, we aren't. The fourth replied. Ninetales, your power and your malice is too much a danger to the world to be allowed to roam free. We have no choice. Then we are done talking. The fox lashed an immense cord of chakra straight down onto where the squad was standing, creating a massive trench. The earth shook from the heavy blow. Kurama's second blow was deflected by the powerful third Hokage, who had to concentrate an unhealthy large amount of chakra into his staff in order to weather the crushing blow. Suddenly the fox felt a heavy, restraining force hold it down. Gritting its teeth, the Ninetales lifted a gigantic rod fall across its back. The third Hokage summoned the fox thought angrily. The monkey leapt to retrieve its shrinking staff and muttered a few words. A mountain bore down on the powerful Bijou. Who do you think I am? Kurama roared. With a show of power, the fox whipped its tails around in all its glory, crushing the mountain. Bits of rock and dust showered onto the earth, bouncing harmlessly off the fox's pelt. Then, with a flare of chakra that would later be felt in distant villages, the Ninetales shattered the third Hokage's genjutsu. Only then did the fox notice that Kushina and the fourth were no longer there. No wonder he didn't sense the red-headed Uzumaki earlier. She was never there to begin with. Surrounding him on all sides, the squad that came with the fourth had managed to position themselves around the massive creature while it was under the third's genjutsu. They were about to use the most chakra-intensive instance of the Flying Thunder God to transport the fox to the target location specified to them by the Hokage. One of the Anbu, a rabbit-masked girl, said quietly, for the village. The fox and the squad disappeared with the third Hokage looking on. The rest was up to Minato and Kushina. Although they had all planned for the worst at this final stage, the third Hokage couldn't help but hope that somehow both Minato and Kushina would survive the Ninetales resealing. Several kilometers behind the Hokage monument, a small infant lay in a swath of blankets. Kushina smiled as she looked down at her son, who lay in the center of the sealing array they had prepared for the occasion. Naruto. Don't be picky. Eat lots and grow strong. Make sure that you bathe every day and stay warm. Also don't stay up late. You need lots of sleep. And make friends. You don't need a lot of friends. Just a few. Ones you can really trust. I wasn't very good at it, but keep up with your studies and practice your ninjutsu hard. Remember that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So don't get too depressed if you can't do something well. Respect your teachers and upperclassmen at the academy. Oh, and this is important, it's about the 3 prohibitions for a shinobi. Be extra careful about lending and borrowing money. Put your mission wages into your savings account. No alcohol until you're 20. Too much can ruin your health, so drink in moderation. Another prohibition is women. I'm a woman, so I don't know too much about this, but all you need to remember is that this world is made up of men and women. So it's only natural to take an interest in girls. But just don't get hooked on bad women. Find someone just like me. Speaking of the 3 prohibitions, be wary of Jiraiya sensei, you know. Naruto, from now on, you're going to face lots of pain and hardship. Be true to yourself, have a dream and have the confidence to make that dream come true. Kushina's voice faltered with a sob. There's so much, oh, so much more that I want to pass on to you. I wish I could stay with you longer. I love you. The redhead looked up at her husband, who had appeared during the latter end of her speech. His expression was inscrutable. They're coming, Kushina. I hope you're ready. The redhead nodded. I am. Their eyes met, and Kushina smiled before falling into a bout of coughs. Blood dribbled down her chin. Her internal organs and chakra system were irreparably damaged by the birth and the Ninetales escape. No Jinchuriki had ever survived having a bijou torn out of its grasps. Not only was the woman frail from childbirth, even with proper medical care, her odds of survival were abysmal. As it stood, it was only her strong will and the Uzumaki's amazing regenerative powers that were keeping her alive. Uzumaki Kushina was dying. Without warning, the Ninetales appeared before them along with the squad responsible for its appearance. Every single one of them were dead from chakra depletion. Not even given a second to regain its bearings, Gamabunta, who Minato had summoned beforehand, jumped on top of the fox, pinning the monster's head into the earth with its fork. Kurama snarled. Yandere-me, Gamabunta struggled, and barely managed to hold on. Swiftly, the fourth activated the 8 trigram seal. Hack Fuin. The fox widened its eyes in despair. Ethereal chains flew from the belly of the blonde infant before it, and bound it in an unbreakable hold. Kurama glared at the blonde Hokage. The hatred in his eyes were unmistakable. Release me and your death shall be swift and painless. Ignoring the belligerent behemoth, the fourth turned to his wife. The Ninetales chakra is too much for the seal. I'm going to have to split it in 2. There's only one way I know of that can do this. Kushina's eyes widened in horror. A lump formed in her throat. The dead demon-consuming seal. Minato nodded. We'd already guessed that this might have been the case. The Ninetales is powerful. Kushina sobbed. No, not you too. She wanted to cry. It was so unfair. Here was the most wonderful man in the world sacrificing his life and soul, and for what? Why couldn't someone else do it? Why him? Why did he have to die? Questions flooded her mind. Naruto was supposed to have a father. Kushina gulped. But I could. No, you can't. The fourth cut in. Your chakra system is all but destroyed. No one else knows how to cast it yet. His voice softened at his wife's apparent anguish. It can't be helped. I love you, Kushina. The village. Fuck the village. Kushina blurted in an unconventional bout of vulgarity. Please. I want you to live. Why does it have to be you? Minato hopped over his son toward his wife, and gave her a hug. Kushina cried into his shoulders. Her lungs were on fire. Every chakra point crushing her nerves and her ability to stay conscious. Despite her pain, Kushina fought desperately to remain alive. To convince her husband to not do this. She knew that it was hopeless. She knew that without this sacrifice, her son would likely be killed by the evil known as the Ninetales. She knew that Konoha would be destroyed and that many more would suffer. Kushina reached up to cup Minato's cheeks in her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm proud of you, Minato. I know you're being strong for me. You don't have to be. I understand. I love you more than you can ever imagine. Minato smiled, giving his wife a quick peck on her forehead. And I you? He turned to his son. Goodbye, Naruto. Remember your mother's words. I hope he paused, choking back tears. I hope you live a long and happy life even without us to be there for you. Kushina pulled her husband toward her, and the couple shared a last kiss before the fourth gently detached himself from his wife to face the Ninetales. Kurama, enthralled by the drama, had sat through the entire scene without visibly struggling. Whether or not he knew it to be true, Kurama had a lot more interest in the lives of the petty humans before him than he'd ever be willing to admit. You cannot seal me, he argued. Let me go. If I break free on my own, I swear that your village and all its people will be wiped clean off the face of this planet. Let me go. Now, the fourth Hokage shook his head. I cannot. He made several hand seals for the dead demon-consuming technique, clapping his hands together for the final seal. Shikafuin, a massive Shinigami, loomed out of the ground and plucked Minato's soul from his body. The Hokage chuckled. That was a lot easier than I thought. His body slumped to the floor, no longer housing his soul. The last thing he saw was Kushina smiling at him, giving him her tacit approval while tears continued to stream down her porcelain cheeks. Goodbye, Minato. Naruto. Kushina collapsed, closing her eyes one last time as she succumbed to the pain and exhaustion that she had been feeling since the Ninetales had been ripped out of her body. The Ninetales struggled valiantly, but to no avail. If he had had more time, he could have overloaded the seal with his chakra and broken its hold, but time was something he did not have. If only the little couple could have dragged out their farewell just a little bit longer. The fox sighed. Being trapped under the power of the 8 trigram seal, it couldn't do anything but watch as the Shinigami tore its chakra in two and sealed it along with the soul of the fourth Hokage. Well shit, muttered the powerful beast. With its power and consciousness cut in two, the Ninetales could no longer hold the 8 trigram seal at bay. The bijou was instantly funneled into the small, infant body of baby Naruto. The third arrived with Ataki Kakashi and a small squad of ANBU in tow. Quickly analyzing the situation, the former Kage took command. Check to see if any of them are still alive. Secure the boy. His Jinchuriki status and his parentage must be kept hidden. Consider this an S-rank secret until further notice. Seconds later, the team of ANBU returned with a small bundle in their arms. Sandame Sama reported a pig-masked woman. The third urged her on in trepidation. Go on, the boy lives. The others are dead, and the Ninetales is gone. The third nodded. He had been expecting the worst. Good work. Take the boy to the hospital. Get him under care. Prepare orphanage registrations for him. Leave the bodies to me. Without a word, she raced in the direction of Konoha with the rest of the ANBU squad following closely behind. Kakashi remained. After several moments, they arrived at the scene. Seeing the bodies of both the fourth and his wife on the floor, he would have fallen into grief if not for his years of shinobi experience and training. Things ended up worse than I thought they would. If only we had more time to plan this out, maybe we could have averted all these casualties, croaked the third Hokage. Kakashi simply stood next to him, staring in wide-eyed disbelief at the husks of the fourth Hokage and his wife. I failed them. The boy whispered as the rest of the squad left the scene. No, the third stated grimly. There was nothing you could have done. Kakashi clenched his fists angrily. Why am I so weak? The third put a hand on the boy's shoulders. You are not weak. If you had not strove to do your utmost. If it weren't for your will of fire, the outcome would undoubtedly have been much worse. We've managed to avert the worst of the crisis. The village is saved but at the cost of many lives. All who served this night are heroes, and that includes you. The third paused for a second. We'll have to put these bodies in temporary storage and carry them back. You remember how to do that, don't you? Kakashi nodded. The third continued. I'll take care of Minato. And with that the two set to work. As the third was preparing the seals for the fourth, a sudden thought occurred to him. Minato's body was in perfect condition. He was absolutely certain that the man could be revived if his soul were returned to his body. I'll have to preserve the body somehow. The third gazed apologetically at the young Hatake as he was drawing up Kushina's body scroll. It was best if the boy didn't know of these plans. Knowing him, Kakashi would make releasing Minato's soul his life mission and lose sight of himself. It would be cruel to give him false hope. The third skillfully drew the storage seal of indefinite preservation and infused a permanent portion of his chakra into it. At the same time, the third laid out a second scroll with his other hand, and he drew out the more generic body storage scroll. Then, with a silent jutsu, he infused the scroll with a perfect copy of the fourth's body. It was done. The old man gave Kakashi a quick glance. Now all he had to do was master the dead demon-consuming seal, and see if he could make any progress in retrieving the fourth soul. All this happened in less than 10 seconds. Kakashi was still working on Kushina's body scroll. The third got up slowly and stretched his tired bones before making his way to the bodies of the fourth's personal ANBU detachment. The day after the funeral ceremonies, Hiruzen sat in the Hokage's office dressed in Hokage garb, and unfurled the scroll he had retrieved from the Forbidden Jutsu archives. The Dead Demon-Consuming Seal. The Dead Demon-Consuming Seal is a sealing technique created by the ancestors of the Uzumaki clan. It enlists the power of the god of death, and, at the cost of the user's soul, can be used to seal anything of equal or lesser value. It is uncertain how the original Uzumaki were able to solicit the Shinigami to their will, and the terms of the contract to this jutsu is unknown. The value of a soul can only be gauged by the Shinigami alone. Users can find themselves only able to seal a fraction of what they intend to seal. When called upon to seal the soul of another being, the Shinigami allows for a contest of power and will. If the user is weaker than his or her target, then it is entirely possible that the user will be unable to seal that target. All sealed contents are stored in the Shinigami's belly. The user's soul will be taken regardless of the technique's success. TCH. I thought so. The old shinobi scoffed in his mind. I can't even summon this thing without losing my soul. How incredibly convenient. The hand seals, chakra techniques, and exercises for this seal are as follows. His eyes flicked through the rest of the scroll. That's it? The old Hokage yelled aloud. The guard to the office poked his head through the door. Hokage-sama? The old man relaxed and set the scroll back onto his desk. Nothing's wrong, Kirishima. The Hokage paused for a moment. Actually, could you have one of the messengers notified to send for Orochimaru? Right away, Hokage-sama. The door closed quickly and the guard was gone. The god of shinobi put the scroll in his desk and took up the morning stack of paperwork. This is going to be a long day. Unfortunately, Orochimaru wasn't in the village. The old Hokage was busy with administration and dealing with the political aftermaths of the Ninetales attack and the death of the fourth Hokage. He would not pick up his revived Minato project until his student showed up. As it happens, it wasn't until the month after the night of the Ninetales attack that Orochimaru's face was to appear in the village again. And so it was that afternoon, while the Hokage was smoking away his break period, that Orochimaru slithered into the office in the guise of a snake. You wish to see me, Sasuke-sensei? The Hokage chuckled. I didn't think you enjoyed such informalities, Orochimaru-kun. Even if it's snake-related. The snake bore its fangs in a wry smile before changing into the form of a pale, long-haired man. A change of scenery, sensei. Everyone needs it once in a while. Yes, especially you, the old man agreed. You're as pale as ever. You should really get more sun. Staying in those labs all day can't be very good for your health. Orochimaru's pale lips quirked. On the contrary, sensei, I'm healthier than ever thanks to some of my laboratory ventures. It's very nice seeing you again, sensei, but you can't have called me here just to catch up. What is it you need me for? The Hokage gave his former pupil a sad grin. Diligent as ever, I see. Well, he reached into his desk, pulled out a scroll, and handed it to his disciple. This is the scroll for the dead demon-consuming seal. What do you know about it? Orochimaru glanced through the scroll without reading it. Sensei, this scroll already describes the technique and its usage fully. Why do you ask? The Hokage rolled his eyes and shot the pale man with an accusing look. A scroll rarely describes all facets of a technique. This is especially true of forbidden techniques such as this one. You know this, Orochimaru. Orochimaru grinned. My apologies, sensei. Unfortunately, I do not know more than this scroll has to offer. I guess it wouldn't be so easy, would it? The old man muttered. Then sitting up, the Hokage gave his student a stern look. And that's why you are here. I need you to help me with research on this technique. We are both connoisseurs of the world's many jutsu. I am old, but you are young. I no longer have the time or energy to make such ventures myself. The Hokage pointed at the stack of papers sitting on his desk. I'm a slave to paperwork, as you can see. Orochimaru shook his head in sympathy. And that is why I've never cared for the position of Hokage. Much too time-consuming, even with all the powers the position bestows. The third nodded. You, on the other hand, have inherited my labs and research into which I once so avidly delved in my youth. I would like you to find a way to release the souls taken by the Shinigami of the dead demon-consuming seal. Orochimaru tilted his head. A way to release the souls sealed with an Uzumaki technique? Whose soul are you trying to retrieve, sensei? I'm sure the only person who knew of the technique in the village was Uzumaki Kushina. In fact, she was the one who wrote this scroll. Here, Orochimaru opens the scroll and stabs a finger at Kushina's name at the bottom. The snake man grinned. It's the fourth, isn't it? TCH. You're too damn smart, Orochimaru-kun. The old man frowned lightly. I have the fourth's body interred in an indefinite preservation storage scroll. Orochimaru simply gleamed. An empty body waiting for a soul to give it life? And where do you have his body stored, sensei? I believe if you leave everything to me, I may be able to revive the fourth in your place. When that happens, I will hopefully be able to bring a living, breathing Namikaze Minato back to Konoha. The third chuckled. His student knew him well. That would be perfect. I'll deliver the scroll to you myself later this evening. Consider this project a secret between the both of us. He paused and took a deep drag, filling the room with smoke afterward. Imagine the surprise on the people's faces when they see their fourth Hokage up and kicking again. The old man chuckled. Orochimaru chuckled along with him. Yes, imagine that. With me in his body. Later that evening, the snake Sannin could be seen tossing the scroll containing the fourth's body from hand to hand. He hadn't perfected the soul transfer technique yet, but his estimations told him that he'd have it mastered in a short number of years. Orochimaru was a patient man. He could wait. Several months later, wearing a demon-faced mask, one of Konoha's 10 ANBU captain knelt before the Hokage. The old man sat behind his desk with an impassive look. Report. The man nodded. Hokage-sama, we've discovered the identity of the culprit behind the disappearance of the various shinobi and citizens throughout the village. The man paused. The Hokage chewed his pipe impatiently. Go on. It's your student, sir. It's Orochimaru. He's been using them for his experiments. We found many notes and chakra diagrams in a raid we conducted not far from the edge of the nation. Hiruzen's pipe fell out of his mouth and clattered to the floor. He'd seen and heard many things over the course of his long shinobi career, but the news of his student's betrayal hit him harder than when he heard of the Ninetales' appearance in the village nearly a year ago. The ANBU captain stood waiting for the Hokage's orders. Hokage-sama? No, he could not show weakness. Not now. The old man cleared his throat. Call all the ANBU captains not currently on duty to me now. The captain bowed. In less than 5 minutes, 4 of the 10 captains of ANBU entered the Hokage's office and hailed him simultaneously. Hokage-sama, the third Hokage wasted no time. I am told that you found evidence of Orochimaru's guilt in the investigations to case number 2. Is this correct? 3 of the captains stepped out. Yes, Hokage-sama. We have all relevant documents right here. The Hokage looked through the papers, hoping beyond hope that somehow they were wrong. As his anxiety and dread solidified into certainty, the Hokage heaved a small sigh. Orochimaru is to be branded an S-ranked criminal. We must capture him. Kill if necessary. Where is he now? Use whatever info you have pertaining to Orochimaru's location and motives. Report all pertinent data to me. Organize your squads to your own quadrants. I will assign 10 extra shinobi to each squad currently here. If you find Orochimaru, call for reinforcements, and report his location back to Intel immediately. Do not engage unless you absolutely believe you can subdue him. Orochimaru is an incredibly dangerous shinobi. Any questions? The ANBU remained quiet. They were well trained in the efficient organization of missions, priorities, and abilities. Each captain knew what it was they were to do, and would segregate tasks among themselves and their subordinates. The Hokage nodded. Dismissed. Orochimaru knew when he was caught. He didn't think they'd suspect him enough to actually raid one of his labs. He was one of the legendary Sannin and a trusted student of the third Hokage himself. Even with his good reputation, Orochimaru did not hesitate to place safeguards where it was needed. His precaution paid off. Orochimaru escaped the moment he realized that an ANBU raid had been conducted in one of his more private labs. The Snake Man smirked as he raced through the forests of Konoha at blinding speed. Looks like the old man is finally catching on. I wish I had been there to see his face when he heard the news. Orochimaru suddenly had a thought and began to cackle. Now imagine his face when I return in Minato's body to wipe out Konoha. I'll definitely be there to see that. 12 years after Orochimaru was branded an S-ranked criminal, the Sannin sat in the chair prepared for him under a well-shaded veranda. Sitting next to him was his old mentor, the third Hokage. Below them, Gaara, the Jinchuriki of Suna, was being pummeled by Itachi's brother, Uchiha Sasuke. The Snake Man, dressed as the fourth Kazekage, cleared his throat. I'm impressed. He uttered in a deep voice. This Uchiha is actually able to penetrate my son's defenses. The Hokage chuckled. Yes. Talented mentors make for talented students. Konoha is full of talents. Their will of fire burns strong. Orochimaru resisted the urge to roll his eyes. The old man was clearly trying to impress him with Konoha's military might. Orochimaru refused to be impressed. What's your will of fire going to do for you when I have your village crushed under my feet? I already have your shinobi of strongest potential under my leash. Once I have Sasuke's body and his natural Sharingan, I will be unstoppable. Not giving the Hokage even a hint to his thoughts, Orochimaru simply agreed. Yes, Konoha is indeed talented. I hope our villages can remain in good relations. The old man chuckled again. Yes. Konoha will ever be an ally of the sand as long as Suna treats us in kind. The Kazekage simply nodded. He couldn't wait to crush Konoha and gloat in victory to his former superior. How dare the old coot nominate Namikaze Minato over his own student? Below, Gaara had shrouded himself in a sphere of sand. An eye spun high in the air atop the arena. Sasuke was being pushed to his limits, and his hold against the cursed seal was weakening. Sasuke was angry and hungering for power. Some of that anger was artificially produced by the seal. The rest was from Sasuke himself. What a piece of work he left behind him after massacring his clan, thought Orochimaru. Itachi, with his diversity of Sharingan, chakra control, and prowess, would have been the better candidate, but Itachi was too powerful to be taken at this stage. What a pity that I'll have to make do with his third-rate brother. Sasuke charged his last Chidori and simply flew toward his opponent at amazing speeds. The Hokage smirked. Your son put up a valiant fight, but it appears Sasuke has the upper hand. Underneath his face mask, Orochimaru grinned. I wouldn't be so sure about that. In the middle of the arena, Gaara uttered a scream of pain and joy. Yes. I will definitely kill you. You will prove my existence. A massive arm of sand leapt out into the air to crush the gaping Uchiha, who was saved only by the Sharingans alerting him of the intended movement. Leaping back, the supposedly victorious Uchiha stared wide-eyed as Gaara, despite being struck by the Chidori, not only remained conscious and standing, but seemed to be growing stronger and more threatening. In the stands, Kabuto had already activated his wide-area genjutsu. Except for some of the more experienced or intuitive shinobi, everyone was asleep. Orochimaru threw up his robes in one hand and a kunai straight into the Hokage's head with the other. The Hokage whipped around and the kunai flew back toward the Snake Man. Orochimaru smiled. Of course the third won't be killed so easily. Why am I not surprised? Around them, the Sound 4, Orochimaru's cursed ninja, erected the violet flames barrier. One of the ANBU who was attempting to rush to the Hokage's side hit the barrier and was burnt to ashes. Outside the barrier, near the village border, a giant three-headed snake broke through Konoha's massive city walls. Below, Gaara, the Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Bijou, had collapsed mid-transformation and was being evacuated by his siblings. Orochimaru. The Hokage seethed. What did you do with Minato's body? What? Orochimaru blinked. After all this time, that's what you want to talk about. Not what were you doing all these years, Orochimaru, or what is the purpose of the cursed seal, Orochimaru, or why did you betray the village, Orochimaru, really, sensei? Minato of all things? I'm disgusted. Orochimaru dug his fingers underneath the folds of his eyelids and lifted the skin off his face. The third's eyes widened in surprise. Snake-like eyes stared back at him from the face of the fourth Hokage. Minato! Why? Why are you doing this? Minato's face cracked into a smug smile. Sarutobi-sensei. I knew you'd gone old, but this? It seems you've really lost your touch. It's me. It's Orochimaru. The old man's mouth gaped. His mind instantly registering what Orochimaru had done. Anger, regret, sorrow, and despair writ themselves on the old Hokage's face. The fourth's voice floated across the rooftop. I've got to say, sensei, coming here in Minato's body was completely worth the trouble. You should see your face. To think I'd see the face of Sarutobi Hiruzen, god of shinobi, looking so pitiful. Orochimaru cackled. Outside the barrier, one of the ANBU spectators voiced a similar shock at what they saw before them. That's the fourth. What the hell? That's the fourth. Orochimaru cackled louder before a stream of flames struck him with full force. Disappearing into the fire, the snake man gave a terrible scream of agony. The Hokage closed his eyes and muttered an apology. Minato, he grit his teeth, I should have just let you rest. To have Orochimaru defile your body like this, I am truly sorry. For the first time in years, the old shinobi cried, allowing tears to form in his eyes and flow down his weathered cheeks. Looks like taking the fourth's body is paying dividends. How nice of you to have sacrificed so much chakra to preserve this body for me. Orochimaru rose from the ashes from where he stood before the flames had disrupted his gloating. He was still wearing Minato's face. If you must know, Sasuke is going to be my next body. After I take Sasuke, I'm going to dump the body of your precious Minato into some ditch in the middle of nowhere after I've dissected it into 1,000,000 pieces. Orochimaru laughed some more. He loved this. He loved speaking in the fourth's voice. He loved the looks of horror and despair his old mentor was giving him. Minato calmed his hysteria. This has been so very entertaining, Sarutobi-sensei, and the fun is only just beginning. Orochimaru began the impure world resurrection of the first and second Hokage, but found that he could no longer move. The third stood before him with his palms clasped together. No! Orochimaru screamed internally. He knew what was happening. The old bastard is using the dead demon-consuming seal to seal away my soul. Minato's face sneered in an ugly grimace. Sarutobi. You've gone too far. With a stubborn will, Orochimaru fought the third's hold over his soul. After all I've done to achieve immortality, I can't lose it here. Not like this. The third grit his teeth. I must atone for what I've done to Minato's body. Orochimaru's soul must be removed. For the sake of the fourth, for the sake of the village, and its people, for the sake of my family. His hands squeezed together even tighter. The Hokage unclenched his teeth and roared in a show of extreme effort. Orochimaru grunted. If things kept up like this, he was going to lose his soul. The Sannin became desperate. No, sensei, please. You do not want to do this. I am your student. You trained me, you raised me with high hopes. I am like a son to you. Release my soul, you old fart. The third's hold on Orochimaru's soul was iron strong. Even the Sannin's stubborn will could not overcome it. With a final gasp, Orochimaru's soul was finally torn from his body. As the old man was losing his consciousness, he silently voiced his last thoughts. Shinigami. If the value of my soul is sufficient after this exchange, return Minato's soul to his body. With that, he collapsed. Sarutobi Hiruzen was dead. Across from him, Minato's body crumbled. The Sound 4 looked on in horror. Orochimaru was not supposed to lose. Tayuya was first to speak. Let's get the fuck out of here. The others nodded. With practiced timing, the four ninja released the violet flames barrier and ran off. The ANBU captain waiting outside wasted no time in reacting to the situation. Don't let them escape, capture them. The other ANBU wordlessly leapt away to pursue the escaping Sound ninja. Down below, the Suna invaders had been subdued. Not too far away, the three-headed snake had been crushed by the toad sage, Jiraiya. Nearly 6 kilometers out from the village, Gaara lay in a heap of blood and tears as his forehead was dealt a heavy blow by Naruto's thick skull. Orochimaru was dead. Suna had surrendered. Konoha had survived the invasion. On the rooftop where the battle between Orochimaru and the third Hokage had occurred, the remaining ANBU captain who had been watching the entire exchange outside the barrier was now kneeling next to the old Hokage's body. Tears fell hidden behind her tiger mask. You were a wonderful shinobi who fought for his people, a shinobi who loved his village with all his heart. Your sacrifice will be remembered. We shall carry on your will of fire, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Many other shinobi who had also gathered around the body of the third when the barrier fell nodded in agreement. More than a few were openly weeping. Among them, Kakashi stood with his eyes closed in silent respect to one of the greatest human beings that Konoha had ever produced. Suddenly, one of the censorine broke the crowd's reverie as he noticed the presence emanating from the spot where Orochimaru had fallen. The enemy, he's still alive. Kakashi's shinobi reflexes went on high alert. The enemy is still alive? The former ANBU assassin flashed across the rooftop with kunai in hand. As he was about to plunge the weapon into the head of the unconscious man, he stopped. His eye widened in disbelief. Impossibly but unmistakably, the man lying across the tiles of the roof, it was the fourth Hokage. It was Namikaze Minato. Several other shinobi appeared at Kakashi's side, several with very similar reactions. The man before them looked exactly the same as he did 12.5 years ago. His identity was unquestionable. A couple of shinobi, masked ANBU by the looks of it, took the initiative and wordlessly took the fourth away for medical attention. The others quickly followed suit. Kakashi stared after them, whispering under his breath. It can't be. His eyes flicked open without warning, and he found himself staring at the distinctive wooden creases of a Konoha hospital room ceiling. Disoriented, the blonde shinobi blinked. This can't possibly be the Shinigami's belly. A sudden clatter sounded nearby, and he turned to find a masked man rushing to his bedside. Minato-sensei. You're awake. The former Kage examined the man who had addressed him with such familiarity. Who are you? His sky-blue eyes focused on the mop of white hair and the chiseled, masked face. He could recognize the hair and the mask anywhere. Kakashi? Kakashi nodded. You look so much older. How long was I gone? The blonde looked around. How am I alive? How did you save me? Wait. Minato had a sudden thought, and he sat up aggressively. Is Kushina alive too? Where's my son? Kakashi rubbed the back of his head with a single hand and smiled apologetically. Whoa! Sensei, slow down. Let me give you the answers in the order you've requested them. The yellow flash slowly settled back into the pillows behind him. Kakashi paused. Whatever he had to say, Minato was ready to assume the worst. It's so good to have you back, Minato-sensei. It's good to be back. First and most importantly, Kakashi held up a finger and leaned forward. Minato prepared himself to hear bad news. I'm going to have to establish a little background. So bear with me. Minato scoffed silently. Since when did Kakashi become such a taunting conversationalist? Still, it was an improvement from the grim, suicidal ANBU specialist that Minato had last known him to be. You are currently being housed in a shinobi hospital room near the Hokage Tower. We found you yesterday lying on the rooftop after the battle between the third and his student, Orochimaru. Both are now dead. Minato's froze rigid as his eyes widened in disbelief at the news. He made no other response, allowing Kakashi to continue. I see that's news to you. Kakashi noted. Have you noticed where we are? The fourth nodded. We're in a Konoha hospital room near the Hokage Tower, but there is no hospital near the Hokage Tower. Either you've built a hospital while I've been away or I'm in the torture and interrogation building. Did I get that right? With perfect accuracy. You get 100 points. Kakashi smiled. You may not have noticed, but you are currently confined under maximum security. There's a seal on your chakra to prevent any funny business, and you won't be able to get 5 feet past this bed. Minato sighed. And you're about to tell me why? Kakashi nodded. Basically, we don't know how you are alive right now. We believe your body may have been possessed by Orochimaru since your death. In fact, we have several witnesses corroborating the story of Orochimaru having fought the third in your body. Minato shivered. Orochimaru, that slimy snake man in his body, gross. If Kakashi noticed the forced reaction, he didn't show it, choosing instead to continue his dialogue. While many wanted to see you revived, others were afraid that we'd be reviving Orochimaru instead. That's why you're here. At this, Kakashi lifted his headband to look straight into the fourth's irises with his Sharingan eye. Are you Namikaze Minato? I am. Minato replied. Kakashi dropped his headband over his Sharingan. I never doubted for a moment. I'm glad I have your confidence. The blonde shinobi gave his student a dazzling smile. How's my son? Kakashi let his spirits relax as he relished the change in topic. Alive and well. He looks up to you and is growing to be a powerful shinobi. He's recently been apprenticed to Jiraiya and has been making amazing progress. I believe he's even learned to summon Gamabunta. Minato's eyes widened with a mixture of shock and pride. And Kushina? How is she? Kakashi's face fell and a pang shot into Minato's heart. Kakashi, is she? Kakashi nodded silently. We thought the both of you died together. We have you buried next to each other, but I guess whatever we have buried next to your wife must have been a replacement of some sort. We checked. Your grave has been untouched since the burial. Minato gulped, but held his composure. He'd have his meltdown later, but now wasn't the time. Is there anything else I need to know? A few stray tears betrayed him as they slid down his cheeks. Since he hadn't technically seen his wife die, Minato had held on to an unreasonable hope that she might have survived their ordeal. The finality of his student's words painfully crushed that hope and cast it into hellish oblivion. Yes, said Kakashi. We are currently in the year 115. It's almost exactly 12.5 years since you were last known to be alive. Also, your son doesn't know who his real parents are and was raised in an orphanage since birth. He doesn't know that you're his dad. Both his status as a Jinchuriki and his parentage are an S-rank secret by decree of the third Hokage. Also, thank you, Kakashi. Minato bowed his head as he fought to hold his crushing feelings of loss at bay. Despite having expected it, the news of Kushina's death had still dealt a heavy blow to his heart. He didn't want to offend his student, but he was barely able to register anything else. There was no point in making Kakashi speak any further. Kakashi stood up silently. It was nothing. I guess I'll be leaving you then. We'll have you out of here soon. I think you'll be happy to find that your former place of residence has been cleared for your return. I'll visit you when you get back. The white-haired ninja stalked off slowly, but paused at the doorway. Sensei, remember what you told me when I tried to get myself killed on suicidal missions after Rin's death? Slowly, Minato recited from his perfect memory. She wouldn't want you to throw your life away in sorrow. Life is precious. Live, Kakashi. Live to carry on her will of fire. Kakashi nodded and left. When the door closed, Minato hung his head and cried. The temporary leader of the village, Shikaku Nara, stood next to the head of the torture and investigation department. He had been alerted of the Fourth's awakening and had arrived swiftly to hear whatever it is he needed to hear. Kakashi appeared before them with a quick shunshin and bowed. The Jounin commander watched him expectantly. So? Is he the fourth or is he Orochimaru? Kakashi responded immediately. He's definitely Namake's Minato, leader. The man has no memories of the 12.5 years since he was proclaimed dead. We can carry on with the plans we've had in acclimatizing him to Konoha and perhaps even the Hokage role. Shikaku gave a sardonic smile. That's if he wants it. Make sure you visit him when he returns home. You and Jiraiya are the only close relations he has left from his time. Kakashi responded affirmatively. Yes, leader, you are dismissed. You will be notified when you are next needed. Kakashi remained standing in place. Leader, the man isn't very receptive at the moment. He's grieving his wife's death. If you're looking to talk to him, I think you should wait until some other time. Shikaku nodded. Duly noted. Dismissed. The Jounin commander turned as Kakashi gave a salute and left. Thank you, Ibiki, for so swiftly setting up the accommodations for the fourth. You've done a great job. We'll meet again when you are next needed. It's time for me to head back to run some more disaster control. Shikaku began to turn away but stopped. You know what? Why don't we get some drinks later? Shikaku Ibiki considered the proposal. Sure. Let's go to that bar near Jounin headquarters. Why don't we invite some of the others too? We'll drink you to the ground and a good luck with the paperwork. Shikaku scowled. TCH. Being the Hokage sucks. Ibiki laughed as the Jounin commander left the TNI department. It would take the TNI specialist several hours to remove the chakra seals and barriers that had been put on and around him. They'd spent that time bringing him up to date to all the key events that have occurred in the village during his absence. Orochimaru had been branded an S-rank missing nin after being found guilty for kidnapping and experimenting on tens of civilians and shinobi from the village. It was only in recent months that the man had made his reappearance in the village of Konoha, which culminated in his death by the hands of the late third Hokage. Before the invasion, the Snake Sannin had also been found to have joined the ranks of an organization known as the Akatsuki, which was being headed by an increasing number of S-ranked missing nin. The names of these S-ranked members were then listed along with a number of crimes they were known to have committed. Some of the names were completely new to the man who had been gone for 12.5 years. Pain? Zetsu? Deidara? Others were more familiar. Hashigaki Kisame, the most powerful of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi, the image of a small boy burbling happily in the arms of Kushina's friend, Uchiha Mikoto, instantly crossed Minato's mind. Apparently, Itachi had murdered every single member of his clan with the exception of his brother, Uchiha Sasuke, before leaving the village as a missing nin. The Uchiha were the most powerful clan in the village. This Itachi must be a terrifying and exceptional shinobi. Minato noted quietly. The woman who was speaking nodded and cleared her throat. She was handed a cup of water which she drank from gratefully. Kushina's going to be miserable when she hears about Mikoto. Thought Minato before he caught his error. Kushina wouldn't be hearing about Mikoto because Kushina was dead. The woman handed her attendant the empty cup and began to talk about the Konoha's political relations with the various hidden villages. Minato appeared to be listening intently, but inside, he felt listless and torn. The familiar smell of tea wafted in the evening air. As the former Kage opened the door to his old apartment room, he saw the ghost of a familiar redhead. She was humming a small tune as she moved through the kitchen with her back turned to him. Minato blinked, and the image was gone. In her place stood a tall, white-haired man with long green sleeves poking out of a light red vest. The man turned around and smiled in greeting. Yo, Minato! The tea's just about done. I'll be right with you. Sit. The blonde shinobi remained where he stood, his hand still holding the door open. Jiraiya-sensei, his mentor gave him a lopsided smile. The wart on the right side of his nose was as persistent as ever. Who else? Minato didn't move. The years had apparently treated the Toad Sage extremely well. He hasn't changed at all, said Toad Sage, turned back around to pour some tea into a cup. How long do you plan to stand at that door? He asked in a conversational tone as he sent the tea flying almost vertically up into another cup and back down without losing a single drop. He repeated the process several times with incredible dexterity. Minato pulled up a chair and sat. The scene was so familiar that he almost expected to see his wife waltz into the kitchen to try to sabotage his teacher's performance while chiding him in a playful voice. Jiraiya-sensei, you show off. Minato's heart twisted painfully as his mentor's voice sounded in a commanding tone. Here, drink this. Jiraiya whipped around and spun a cup full of tea through the air. The fourth caught the cup between his thumb and two fingers and set it down slowly. Jiraiya strolled out of the kitchen with another cup full of tea in one hand, and the entire kettle in another. He inched back a chair and sat down across from his long-lost student. I cleaned up the apartment for you. I've also arranged it so that this place would feel more like it used to. You'd be surprised what the last tenant did to your kitchen. The sage smiled broadly, and Minato lifted the cup to take a sip. How is it? Sweet. He took another sip. Bitter. Just like I remember. Jiraiya emptied his cup with one swig before pouring himself some more. How are you feeling? I feel like my heart's been torn to pieces. I wish Kushina were here. As do I, said the sage earnestly, but she's not and we're just going to have to deal with it. Minato gulped, his voice beginning to waver. To me, it's only been a couple days. I wasn't exactly conscious the last decade, you know. I remember her sitting where you're sitting right now. I'm seeing her ghost wherever I look. When I came in, I saw her in the kitchen humming her usual tune. It's only been a couple weeks since you were here when we told you about Naruto's name. I feel as if she'd walk in any moment. Minato. Jiraiya cut into his student's tirade. The blonde choked back a sob. How did Tsunade deal with it? A hand fell on his shoulders. Minato, Tsunade was inconsolable after the death of Dan and Nawaki. She's spending the rest of her days as a drunkard, and drinks to forget her sorrow. Jiraiya dropped his hand and spoke in a serious tone. Tsunade still hasn't returned to the village. Last I heard, she's taken to gambling across the land, and has been striking up debt everywhere she goes. Tsunade gambles to lose. Jiraiya shook his head. I know what she's trying to do. That woman is using the losses she's racked up to mask the loss that she feels in her heart. It's clearly not working. She's been at it for nearly 20 years now. His student's face fell. She's still alive, isn't she? At this, Jiraiya cracked his palm across the fourth's face. Ignoring his well-honed reflexes, the former Kage allowed his head to be whipped aside by the stinging blow. The Sanin's voice faltered. Minato, the pain may not really go away, but don't become like Tsunade. We just got you back after all these years. You know, I didn't think I'd see you sitting here talking to me like this ever again. The blonde shinobi looked down apologetically. Suddenly, Minato felt a mixture of affection and gratitude. He was grateful that Jiraiya had come over to set up his apartment for him. Grateful that the man was sitting here in front of him, talking to him and making him tea. Grateful that he cared. Thank you, Jiraiya-sensei. The fourth said quietly. The Toad Sage smiled. You still have a son, you know. I know. With the way you've been sulking, I was almost convinced that you'd forgotten. Jiraiya shook his head. When are you planning on visiting him? Tomorrow if possible. Minato finished the rest of his tea, and Jiraiya poured him some more. Tell me about him. How is Naruto doing? When it came to his son, the subject seemed to stretch on endlessly. Naruto was an incredibly outgoing boy with mischievous tendencies and a distinct sense of humor. Apparently, he had taken to calling the legendary Toad Sage Ero Sennin. With good reason, Minato thought. The two talked late into the evening and were only interrupted by the appearance of one Hatake Kakashi, who came in with dinner in one hand and a large bottle of expensive-looking sake in another. Jiraiya fixed his fellow white-haired shinobi with a deadpan glare. You're late. It's almost midnight. Kakashi waved apologetically. Well, I saw a couple of pretty butterflies and I lost myself in a dream. You understand what that's like. The sage gave a stern nod. Well, if it's the butterflies, then I can't really fault you. They must have been exceptional. Very. Kakashi smiled as he set the table with several plates of steamed buns and tightly sealed bowls of noodles. Horrified, Minato looked from Jiraiya to Kakashi and then back to the Sannin. No way. Kakashi looked to his mentor as he set some disposable chopsticks in front of him. What's wrong, sensei? Minato stood up. Jiraiya-sensei. This is not what I meant when I asked you to help him out of his depression. Jiraiya simply laughed loudly at his student's protest. Realizing he wasn't going to get his message across, the fourth sat back down and muttered sulkily. There must have been better ways to do it than to teach him your habits. At this, the Toad Sage became hysterical. Kakashi pulled down his face mask to eat his share of the food. Later, the three ate, drank and talked well into the morning. By the time they'd finished the last of the noodles and steamed buns, sunrise was only a few hours away, and Minato had consumed most of the sake that Kakashi had brought earlier. Kushina, Nothing will happen to you under my watch," he muttered before passing out in a drunken stupor. "I promise." The two more sober shinobi looked at each other knowingly and carted the fourth Hokage into bed. Kakashi cleared the table as Jiraiya filled a small tub with soap and water. 15 minutes later, the white-haired men laid out the individual futons that they had each brought with them on the apartment's living room floor. Kakashi laid flat on his back staring up at the ceiling. "You think he'll be okay?" "Definitely," Jiraiya replied with confidence. "We're here for him. He'll be fine." Kakashi closed his eyes, muttering one last word before drifting into sleep. Hopefully, sunlight flew through the room as Kakashi drew the curtains aside. The effect was instantaneous. Minato groaned and threw a pillow over his head as the light fried his eyeballs. "Go away," he muttered. Kakashi tore the pillow from his mentor's grasping hands. "Kushina's being so mean," thought Minato as he blindly reached for the pillow that Kakashi held just outside his reach. "Kushina," he groaned as he opened his eyes against a glaring hangover. His vision blurred, then refocused onto a mop of white hair over a dark blue mask. "Yo, my cute Minato-sensei." Minato leapt out of bed with a screech and landed on his feet on the other side of the bed, his body settled in a defensive stance. "Kakashi? What are you doing here?" he asked as he dropped his stance and stumbled, nearly losing his balance. His student flashed across the room to catch the extremely hungover blonde. "I came to visit you last night, remember? I brought food and sake and everything." The blonde rolled his eyes. "No, I meant what are you doing here in my room?" Kakashi smiled innocently. "Do I need a reason to visit my cute little sensei?" "Oh my god, Kakashi!" Minato cried, exasperated. His brain throbbed against his skull, causing him to wince in pain. Kakashi settled his mentor into a nearby chair. "We were going to see your son today, remember? Jiraiya-sama is going to take your son on a trip to find Tsunade. Weren't you going to go with them?" Minato leapt out of the chair, ignoring the debilitating symptoms of his hangover. "They're leaving this morning? What are we waiting for?" Kakashi made an exaggerated grimace. "Well, first, you'll need some breakfast. Second, you're going to do something about your horrible breath. Third, you're going to pack and make yourself presentable. But what if you still have a few hours before they meet and head out? Don't worry about it. Remember. Main entrance. 10 o'clock. Minato nodded as Kakashi opened the bedroom window. The masked shinobi gave his mentor one last look. "There are some hard-boiled eggs on the kitchen table and heated tea on the stove. You'll find something for your hangover in the bathroom cabinet." Kakashi put a foot to the window ledge. "See you later." He leapt out into the streets and was gone before Minato could respond. The blonde felt ashamed with himself as he stumbled into the bathroom and turned on the water for a cold shower. "Kushina would be so disappointed with me." The former Hokage laughed mirthlessly after realizing that he'd stepped into the shower still wearing the hospital-issued clothes he'd had on since they'd found him. The water soaked into his shirt. He peeled the pieces of cloth off his well-preserved body and half-expected Kushina to walk in and join him. The playful, sing-song chime of her voice sounded through his memories. "Minato, I'm coming in." An image of his wife dancing through the doorway wrapped in a small towel flared through his mind. Tinges of arousal burned at his core before it was consumed by overwhelming grief. What a mess I'd become. Jiraiya swallowed the hard-boiled egg he'd nipped for breakfast and gulped down the rest of the tea from his bottle. "I've definitely had better," he thought with a gaping yawn. It was a little after dawn, and he'd only had about 3 hours of sleep. "Oh well, it's the life of a ninja. I'll just have to deal with it," he mused blandly. Jiraiya reached up and snapped a small branch from the tree he was sitting in and whittled it down with a bit of wind manipulation. The toad sage then began picking his teeth as he scanned the streets for women to ogle. Jiraiya frowned. He only managed to spy an old lady taking an early morning walk. Her bosom hung perilously near her waist, and it was clear that she was at least 30 years older than he was. He ogled her anyway. "I've definitely seen better." It was at this moment that Kakashi chose to fly out of his student's bedroom window and land on the branch next to him. Jiraiya stood up. "Well, that was quick, let's go." Kakashi nodded and the two flew across the roofs of Konoha toward the village's council room. They landed in front of the administration's complex and began to make their way to the registration desk. "You think you can convince them to choose her?" Kakashi asked. "They'll listen to me," the sage said with confidence. The attendant at the desk saluted as they approached. "Jiraiya-sama, we have you registered. Please go ahead. It's the main council room which is on the top floor." "I know," Jiraiya said as he made his way toward the stairs. "Of course, excuse me," the attendant replied apologetically before turning to face the white-haired jounin before him. "Kakashi, you're late." "So was Jiraiya, and we were only late by a couple minutes." Kakashi smiled. "Well, you know how it is." The attendant rolled his eyes and pointed toward the stairway. "Up ahead, please." The jounin nodded and disappeared with a swirl of leaves and a shunshin after signing the register. For what felt like the 100th time since he's taken the job, the attendant scowled as he stared at the pile of leaves littering the ground. "Damn it! I swear he does that just to piss me off." The man left his desk to get a broom. Around the council room table sat Konoha's most prominent political and military figures. Sitting at the head of the table were the only two members of the Konoha Council, Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Yuditane. They were the ones who would have the final say in who was to become the next Hokage, sitting on their left and right were Shikaku and Jiraiya respectively. Behind them stood several ANBU figures wearing their customary masks. Further down the table, Danzo sat with his eyes closed. He was the only other person in the room who had the privilege of ANBU protection. Kakashi scoffed silently as he completed his scan of the room. I know for a fact that those two aren't ANBU. Having been a part of ANBU, the former specialist knew that no two ANBU ever wore the same mask in each other's presence. Clearly, Danzo still fielded private soldiers, but despite the original decree for Danzo to dispel his root operatives, the council had turned something of a blind eye to the man's disobedience. Before he could muse further, Koharu cleared her throat loudly. Thank you, Kakashi, for being less late than usual, she said pointedly. Now then, with the addition of Hatake Kakashi, we may now begin the meeting. Koharu finished her speech and looked to Hamura, who cleared his throat and began his part. All of you know why we are gathered here. The late third Hokage has passed away defending the village to the very end. He was an exceptional shinobi of Konoha, and his passing will be greatly grieved. His will of fire lives on in all of us. We cannot linger forever in our grief. The village needs an Hokage. It needs someone to lead its people and help to create and maintain a peaceful, lasting Konoha. Hamura paused to give everyone a hard look. Here we have gathered some of our most exceptional shinobi, and I know some of you have serious aspirations to take the seat. At this, both council members looked pointedly at Danzo, who sat very still in place. However, we already have a list of candidates from among you who we deem acceptable for the position. Those who aren't on this list have our deepest apologies. Hamura looked straight at Danzo, who feigned apathy. The only trace of his discontent was the tightening of his knuckles over the table. Koharu picked up where Hamura left off. We actually only have 3 people on our list. If none will take the position, then we will see about other candidates pending suggestions. She turned her eyes to the man sitting next to her. Shikaku Nara, you've shown yourself to be an able commander and an inspirational leader. Orochimaru's invasion and Tsunade's betrayal left our village in a desolate state. You've made major contributions to dealing with the aftermaths of these events. In addition to your years as an incredibly efficient and hard-working Jounin commander, we can think of no better person to take up the mantle of Hokage. Danzo nodded his head while several other voices of agreement rung from the crowd. Shikaku sighed and looked around seriously at his fellow villagers. Honestly, I do not want the position. I am not ready for it, nor will I ever be. These last few days have showed me that I neither have the drive nor the patience to be the Hokage. I believe that I'm better suited to doing what I enjoy doing best, and that is to strategize and establish the tactical missions and positions of our various military ventures as the Jounin commander. Someone else will have to take the spot. Koharu fixed the scarred man with a placid stare. That is quite disappointing, but I see you've made up your mind. The Jounin commander nodded. Very well, the old woman sighed. Hamura, you do the honors. The other member of the council cleared his throat. Jiraiya of the Sannin. You are our next preferred candidate. As a long-standing shinobi of Konoha, you've been incredibly loyal to the village. You also hold a long list of achievements under your name. You were a major figure in the Third Shinobi War and have proven yourself a powerful shinobi. You were teacher to the Fourth Hokage, and your students have grown to become exceptional shinobi in their own rights. At this, the Tiger Mask ANBU nodded in agreement as Hamura continued speaking. You're a born leader, a guide to those in need. The result of your guidance has always been exceptional. You are well versed in the politics of our village and can become Hokage with ease. The Toad Sage chuckled lightly and rubbed the back of his head. You're making me sound better than I really am with the way you're laying it on, Hamura. He dropped his hands and shook his head. I do not believe I am suited to becoming Hokage, and am definitely more efficient out in the field than in the office. I believe, however, that the other Sannin, Tsunade, is much more suited to the task than I am. As granddaughter of the first Hokage, her war credentials are the same as mine. She is a powerful shinobi in her own right, and is responsible for many medical advances. As former head of our village's medical program, she's shown herself an extremely capable leader who is well loved for both her heritage and the countless lives that have been saved under her influence. Jiraiya gave the 2 council members a look of confidence. She would make a better Hokage than I. Koharu looked to her fellow council member, who gave her an approving nod. Well, we did consider her briefly, but the problem is, we do not know where she is. She is not in the village and hasn't been for many years. If she can somehow be found, then we'd consider her for the position. The Toad Sage nodded sagely. And who is this third candidate that you're considering? That would be our recently recovered fourth Hokage, Namake's Minato. Obligatory transitional intermission. The council room filled with chatter. Most had not heard about the discovery of the fourth since no official announcement had been made yet. In addition to those in command, only the shinobi who had discovered and cared for the man were privy to the information. Shinobi didn't gossip for very good reasons. Hamura cleared his throat loudly. Silence, please. The chatter died down. As to the circumstances of his coming back from the dead, those can be discussed later if necessary. As of right now, we'd like to officially declare the fourth's discovery an S-rank secret until further notice. Our relations with IWA and Kumo have been tenuous at best. If IWA were to hear of the Fourth's reappearance, they may be tempted to try some unsavory military or political maneuvers against us in retaliation for what he did to them during the previous war. Kumo may decide that Konoha had become too powerful with the re-addition of our former Kage. The ramifications are the same. It is best that we keep this amongst ourselves. Danzo chose this moment to open his one unbandaged eye that he had been holding closed. And how would you make the man Hokage if his identity is such an important secret? If he were to become Hokage, then the secret would naturally dissolve. Besides, Konoha just took quite a blow. I'm sure the death of the third and a sixth of our shinobi forces more than makes up for the addition of one Namake's Minato into our ranks. Koharu sniffed. One of the women sitting in the room motioned to speak. That is true regardless of whether or not he chooses to become Hokage. Hamura shook his head in stubborn refusal of her logic. Well, Danzo interrupted. Since when did Konoha fear other nations to such a degree that it'd force its more powerful shinobi to hide themselves as S-rank secrets? When the legendary Sannin first gained their titles, did we mark them S-rank secrets? When Sarutobi Hiruzen showed an astounding mastery of all 5 elements, did we turn him into an S-rank secret? Has Konoha become so weak that we've become afraid to even harbor powerful shinobi? I remember a time in which powerful shinobi were flaunted to both show the strength of the village and inspire fear in the enemy. The old warhawk sighed. What kind of backwards world are we living in these days? Jiraiya gave Danzo a hard look before articulating his thoughts on the matter as was expected of him. He has a point. This type of secret impinges on the freedom and well-being of our village's strong shinobi. I say we do away with such impositions. The fourth does not need to be shunned by his own village. The council members looked to each other. Koharu spoke up first. Fine. But if IWA or Kumo declares war, know that it is because of what you've decided here today. We are getting slightly off topic. She looked to the only Sannin present. Jiraiya. We don't know where Tsunade is. Since you don't want the position, our former Hokage, Namake's Minato, would be the obvious choice for the role. Kakashi motioned to speak. Yes, Kakashi? He doesn't want the position. Hamura furrowed his eyebrows as his fellow council member looked to Jiraiya. What? Is that true? Asked Koharu. The Toad Sage nodded. We spoke to him last night. He wants to be sent afield. There's someone he wants to track down, and he thinks he can do it better as an active shinobi. Someone was responsible for the Ninetales attack that night, and he says that he can find that person. The council objected. But he can do that and still be Hokage, can he? Jiraiya sighed and shook his head. To be honest, his wife's death is probably the main reason he's rejecting the role. She was the reason he became Hokage in the first place. Now that she's gone, he no longer desires the position. There's really nothing we can do about it. Then I guess we can start taking requests from aspiring Hokage. Jiraiya cut in. Wait, what about Tsunade? Koharu shook her head. We don't know where she is. We've established that. Jiraiya smiled. He'd been keeping track of his teammate since she left nearly 20 years ago. Actually, I've recently gotten some very reliable information from my network and can almost pinpoint her exact location. If you give me a couple weeks, I'll have her back in Konoha in time for the official Hokage selection. Jiraiya paused to let his words sink in. The council members talked to each other for a few moments before reaching an accord. It is agreed. If you can bring Senju Tsunade back to Konoha in time for the official selection, we will give her the position. The Toad Sage grinned. I'd also like to take one Uzumaki Naruto with me. Uzumaki Naruto? Hamura looked to Koharu, who shrugged. They knew exactly who and what Naruto was, but they also knew that if anyone, Jiraiya could keep him secured. We will permit it. Jiraiya mentally gave himself a high five. Minato's coming too. Koharu and Hamura shared a look. Naruto's father. Fine. The rest of the meeting will be dedicated to request for the Hokage position on the off chance that Jiraiya doesn't find Senju Tsunade. We will listen and judge impartially. Those who aren't submitting a request may be dismissed. Danzo raised his hand to speak. Wait. I'd like to hear about the fourth. A number of attendees voiced a similar sentiment. All right. Hamura sighed. Shikaku, would you? Sure. The village's soon-to-be extemporary leader stood up to give a summary of the fourth's discovery and subsequent recovery. After helping the Jounin commander complete his report on the fourth, Kakashi decided that he was no longer needed and left the meeting room. Jiraiya stayed. He needed to give a rough summary of what he was going to do and where he was going to be during his search for his teammate. He also stayed to help analyze the various Hokage applicants. Jiraiya wasn't foolish enough to believe that Tsunade would simply agree to return to Konoha with him, even if it's to become Hokage in place of their late mentor. The Sannin's voice held a lot of political weight, and he stayed to make sure they didn't pick some dunce who just happened to know how to kiss up to the expectations of the two council members. The meeting would last until noon at least. It was merely 7:28 a.m., a little bit over an hour since the meeting was started. Kakashi made his way out of the administration complex toward Naruto's apartment. After the battle with that red-headed Suna nutcase, Naruto had been sent to the hospital for medical treatment only to be released a few hours later despite heavy injuries. As long as his chakra system was untouched, Naruto's Jinchuriki status and his Uzumaki blood almost guaranteed instant recovery from all but the most lethal blows. I don't care what people think, thought Kakashi with a hint of envy. Being a Jinchuriki is awesome. The Jounin stood in front of his student's apartment room door. Now, how should I go about doing this? Kakashi snapped up a sheet of paper and brush and wrote. 10 o'clock, Konoha main gate. Don't be late. Kakashi. He was about to stick the note on the door when he had a better idea. Crumpling the paper, the Jounin opened the door to Naruto's apartment and walked in. He was going to have to remind the kid to remember to lock his front door. A soft snore emanated from further inside. He began to make his way through the clutter of things littered around the floor. What's with all this shit? He thought before reaching the source of the snoring. Naruto was lying in the corner of a dark room, asleep as expected. The Jounin reached up to lift the thick curtains of the window above Naruto's bed. As the light filtered into the room, Naruto scrunched up and stuffed his pillow over his head with a groan. Kakashi pried the pillow out of Naruto's hands, and he held it just outside of the boy's reach. Naruto grasped blindly for his pillow. What the? He muttered sleepily. He opened his eyes to the sight of a masked Cyclops. Yo, my cute student. Naruto leapt up with a screech and clambered to the other side of his bed, stopping only when he had his back glued to the wall. Kakashi-sensei, what the hell are you doing here? Kakashi thought as he plastered an innocent smile onto his face. Deja vu. Do I need a reason to visit my cute little student? Naruto remained stuck to the wall in horror. No, seriously, Kakashi-sensei. What kind of sensei sneaks into his 12-year-old student's room in the morning while he's sleeping? That's creepy. I didn't know you were a pedophile. The word's pedophile and I don't think it means what you think it means. Naruto relaxed and crossed his arms with a frown. Well, that still doesn't explain what you're doing in my apartment, near my bed and holding my pillow. Give me back my pillow. Kakashi tossed the pillow toward the blonde who caught it with a self-righteous pout. The blonde slid his back down the wall and sat cross-legged. His hand went to his chin in an exaggerated thinking position. Kakashi-sensei. If you aren't here to mess with my apartment or to harass me, then you must be here to give me something super awesome and important before you leave on a long trip. He looked up at his mentor expectantly. Am I right? Kakashi tapped his masked chin. Partly. If you think my morning wake-up routine isn't harassment, then I'm pretty sure I failed. Naruto scoffed. Whatever. More importantly, Jiraiya is planning to take you on a training trip and will meet you later at Konoha's main gate. I do in fact have a surprise waiting for you there. Really? Naruto's eyes gleamed in excitement. The Jounin nodded. I'm sure you'll like it. Be there at 10 o'clock sharp. You don't want to be late and miss out. The boy cheered. Thank you so much, Kakashi-sensei. Are you coming on the training trip too? What's the surprise exactly? An exclamation mark punctuated every single statement. It wouldn't be a surprise if I told you now, would it? Kakashi smiled before adopting a slightly heavier tone. And no, I'm not going. I'll have to take care of Sasuke. He's still not fully recovered from his injuries and his curse seal has been acting up even more frequently since the invasion. The smile almost literally melted off Naruto's face. I hope Sasuke's okay. I wish he'd stop pushing everyone away. The blonde's face drooped. Sometimes I think he forgets that he has people who really care about him. Kakashi sighed. We'll get to him eventually. Yeah. Naruto beamed at Kakashi's words. We won't let him become a gloomy loner. Not on our watch. Kakashi nodded as he turned to leave. Not on our watch. I'll see you later. Naruto called to his mentor. Hey, sensei, what is it? Are you going to visit Sasuke now? Can I go with you? Kakashi thought for a moment then nodded. Sure. They're still fixing him up, but he should be out in a couple days. We'll have to go now if you want to see him before the trip. Naruto jumped up. Okay. Give me 5 minutes and I'll be right out. You better wait for me. Kakashi watched the blonde fly around the apartment in practiced ease. With a shake of his head, the former ENBU specialist slowly made his way back out of the cluttered apartment room. Uchiha Sasuke was bandaged in several casts. He lay on a bed in a Konoha hospital room feeling exasperated and bored. I need to train, he thought. I need to get stronger. How could he ever beat Itachi lying wounded in a hospital bed? These and other thoughts plagued his mind as he once again thought back to the fight between Naruto and Gaara. Since when did Naruto become so strong? Since when was he contracted to such powerful summons? Not only that, but Naruto's ability to fight and think on the fly was something that Sasuke recognized to be a distinct advantage that the blonde had over him. The raven-haired genin began to scorn himself. All I did was use the Chidori and rely on my Sharingan to cover everything else. There was also no point in denying the fact that Naruto had massively superior chakra reserves. Sasuke knew from personal experience that the scale at which Naruto used the Kage Bunshin wasn't something that could simply be copied. It was at this point that Sasuke made his ultimatum. He could feel instinctively that the curse seal could be used to make him a lot more powerful. He'd heard that the 4 ninja that Orochimaru brought with him were not only able to hold back entire squads of ANBU while their master fought the Hokage, They were also able to individually hold off and evade A and BU pursuit. Sasuke decided that he would seek out this power and return to face Naruto in single combat. If I win, I'm leaving the village to find these other curse-sealed shinobi and see what they can teach me. If I lose, then maybe Naruto's right. Maybe strength does lie in hard work, friendship, trust and connections. Sasuke smirked. You're right. The nurse who had been caring for him came around to update him on his physical condition before leaving for the night. All your internal hemorrhages have been pretty much fixed. Your bones will be regrown by tomorrow. You were lucky that they were clean fractures, otherwise you'd be in here for a few extra days. Sasuke sighed. Yeah, that's what you told me when I first came in. The nurse gave him a look. Did I? Well, I must have completely forgotten. Have a good night then, Sasuke-kun. With that, the nurse turned her heels and left. Sasuke closed his eyes and fell asleep just as the night shift began. The next morning, he was jarred awake by the sound of the most annoying voice in the world. Sasuke! Are you awake? Are you okay? Sasuke winced. Naruto was loud. Yeah, I'm awake, no thanks to you, dope. Naruto sighed with exaggerated relief. Phew. For a moment there, I thought you were dead or something. If I was dead, dope, they wouldn't be treating me in a hospital. Sasuke looked up and saw Kakashi standing further back. TCH. Things are going to be more troublesome with him being here. Naruto laughed and rubbed the back of his head. Well, I'm just glad you're alright. We've been worried about you. Sakura would be here if she weren't also being treated. Sasuke's eyes widened. Sakura's here? Naruto nodded. Yes, she's on the floor below this one in room 3A. She's still asleep, so we didn't bother her. Sasuke gave his teammate a deadpan glare. Yeah, well, I was asleep, and you just came barging right in. Naruto shook his head in apology. Sorry about that. It's just that I'm going on a training trip and I heard I'd have to leave before you're being let out, so I asked Kakashi to bring me here to see you before I go. Sasuke shifted his glare to Kakashi, who was staring down into that orange book he always had with him. Naruto took a breath. Maybe I should go wake up Sakura too, but Sakura's a girl, and well, Naruto paused for a lack of words. You know, Sasuke looked horrified. Naruto's shy? Haven't you asked her out like 100 times? Is the world ending or something? Waking her up is different. There's something called chivalry when you treat a girl you know. Sasuke huffed, amused. And since when did Uzumaki Naruto know anything about chivalry? Naruto pouted. Hey, team. I'll make you eat those words. I know lots about chivalry. For example, I don't just go and wake up girls from their sleep. Sasuke's lips twitched as he fought the smile that was threatening to escape. You're an idiot. In the background, Kakashi felt more than a little relieved as his two students bantered comfortably with each other. That Naruto, I can't even hold a candle to him. Naruto's visit with Sasuke lasted a mere 20 minutes. He had to pack and get rid of the perishables in his fridge for the trip. Before he left the hospital, however, he went down to room 3A to visit Sakura by the prompting of his raven-haired Uchiha rival. Luckily, Sakura was already awake and was reading through a medical textbook that Kakashi had brought her from the Shinobi archives. As he approached his crush, Sakura put her book down, giving him a small wave and a cheery greeting. It was nice to have visitors. Hey Naruto. Naruto grinned from ear to ear. Sakura-chan. I'm so glad you're awake. That Sasuke was going to make me wake you up. That's so stupid, right? He so doesn't know anything about chivalry. What? Sakura smiled and nodded to mask her confusion. Right. Glad that Sakura was being more receptive than usual. Naruto plowed into his next line of thought. So listen, Sakura-chan. I'll be going on a really long trip and won't be back anytime soon, so this might be the last time I see you in a long time. Naruto looked expectantly at the pinkette. This is where she tells me that she'll miss me and how much she actually loves me and how she doesn't want me to go. What's the trip for? She asked. Naruto withered a little but regained his composure quickly. I'm going on a training trip with Jiraiya of the Sannin, he said proudly. Oh. When will you be back? Naruto shrugged. I don't know. It could be a few weeks. It could be 2 years. Naruto gently took hold of Sakura's hand. I'll miss you, Sakura-chan. Sakura resisted the urge to whack the boy in the back of the head and nodded amiably. Me too, Naruto beamed. When I get back, I'll be so much stronger, you won't even recognize me, Dadabayo. Sakura shook her head with a small smile. Sure, Naruto. I'll be looking forward to it. Maybe then you'll stop being such an idiot, Sakura-chan. That's so mean. Naruto smiled wryly. I'll stop calling you an idiot when you stop being one. Naruto nodded before changing his tone drastically. Sakura-chan. Take care of Sasuke, team. I heard he's been kind of out of it since the Chunin exams. I know you care more about him than any other person. Don't let him get too gloomy and depressed with his revenge stuff, alright? Sakura tried to give her worried teammate a reassuring smile. Don't worry about that, Naruto. Sasuke's in good hands. Naruto tightened his grip on Sakura's hand. Will you miss me so much that you'd be willing to dump that Sasuke and go out with me when I get back? Sakura rolled her eyes. Not a chance. Now if you don't let go of my hand, it's going to be flying in your face, and trust me, It's going to hurt. Naruto dropped her hand. It was worth a shot. I'll see you when I get back then. As he began walking out of the room, Sakura called out to him. Naruto. Yeah? Take care of yourself. Of course. Who do you think I am? Naruto turned back around and struck a wide stance. I'm the great, future Hokage, Uzumaki Naruto. Yeah, whatever. Get out of here. Later then. Sakura-chan. Naruto called before racing out of her room. The pinkette picked up her book. Baka. Later. Sakura heaved a small sigh. She wasn't sure how she felt about Naruto's leaving since he hadn't been absent for that long yet, but the class clown had become a comforting presence to her since they'd been placed in the same genin team. Naruto may have been a loud-mouthed idiot sometimes, but his cheery nature and strong convictions had grown on her over the 6 months they'd been together. I'll definitely miss him. Starting 7:30 in the morning, the fourth Hokage set out to see how his village had fared since the Ninetales assault. Having had his face carved into the side of the massive mountain cliff hanging over the village, his identity could be easily discerned by any Konoha villager. Thus it was to no surprise that his tour began to cause a ruckus in the village. It began when some of the more inquisitive or bold villagers began walking up to him. The first to approach him was a friendly-looking couple. The male spoke first. The fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato. Is that you? That's me, and who might you be? He asked with a smile. My name's Hirono Kizashi and this is my wife, Mabuki. It's such an honor to be talking to you. Yandame-sama. The couple bowed and the fourth nodded. The wife spoke next. If you don't mind us asking, where have you been all this time, Yandame-sama? We thought you were dead. Kizashi nodded. I thought I was dead too. It's a long story, but it's good to be back. I see the village population is still growing strong. I look forward to living among you again. The fourth gave his own perfunctory bow. Kizashi grinned. We are only doing our duty to the village. We can never forget the sacrifice you and your wife made for us that night, and we can only put utmost effort into doing our part. Minato missed the latter end of Kizashi's pleasantries as a numbing shock raced through his body. The image of his wife's last moments came crashing down on him like a meteor. I seriously need to do something about these emotional reflexes. I can't keep living like this. He thought inwardly. On the outside, his face recorded none of his inner turmoil. Yes. I hope our sacrifice has brought to our son a better life, he said, referring to the opportunities that Naruto would have with the added powers of having a bija sealed inside of him. The couple shared a look. He had a son? If the fourth had a son, wouldn't they have heard about it? Kizashi shook his head in sympathy. We didn't know you had a son. He is most likely dead. I'm sorry, Yandame-sama. Truly. What? My son is dead? Minato gave him an inquisitive look, the words leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Last I heard, he was alive and well. Surely you've heard of him? Naruto? Uzumaki Naruto? Kizashi furrowed his brow. Uzumaki Naruto? That Uzumaki Naruto? He was really the fourth son. After the fourth and his wife died sealing the Ninetales into him, Naruto had his Jinchuriki status made known to various orphanage caretakers out of necessity. The Sannin Jiraiya and a small team of shinobi were frequently there to conduct time-consuming checks on the bija seal to make sure that it was functioning properly. Despite having been told that it was an S-rank secret, some of the more gossipy ones managed to leak the information. The entire village was made aware that Uzumaki Naruto was Jinchuriki of the Ninetales in less than a month. S-rank secret or not, people began to talk about it openly. Such brazen disregard for village rules was finally silenced by the public execution of some of the more well-known rule breakers. The village stopped talking about Naruto and the Ninetales, but in exchange, many began to hate the boy, blaming him for the deaths of those who they considered wrongly executed. The blame eventually expanded to include the deaths of the fourth, his squad, and all the Ninetales victims during the night of its assault. That Naruto was the fourth son was all but unknown. Many thought that his surname, Uzumaki, was given to him in honor of the last Jinchuriki of the Ninetales. The fourth's wife, Uzumaki Kushina. Whoever heard of a blonde Uzumaki? His being raised in an orphanage didn't help either. Surely if the fourth Hokage had any offspring, he'd be raised in a nurturing environment by someone important like the third Hokage or Jiraiya of the Sannin. Such were the thoughts of many villagers. Even the less hate-blinded portion of the village chose to shun him to avoid the massive social taboo of siding with him. By the age of 6, Naruto was ostracized by all but a select few individuals, among which included the third Hokage. Those who knew the full truth also happened to be those who knew how to keep their mouths shut. Those who didn't only knew half the truth that the Ninetales tore apart a lot of families and killed many upstanding Konoha citizens. The Ninetales was contained within this boy Uzumaki Naruto. The Ninetales could very well be Uzumaki Naruto. Hirono Kizashi and his wife were one of those who only knew half the truth. Naruto's exuberance had helped to tone down and reverse many people's opinions about him in his past 6 months as a hard-working genin. But that didn't mean that the hatred before didn't exist. Kizashi grimaced inwardly, his expression remaining relatively jovial. Oh. That kid. He's doing well. His wife nodded. Yeah. He's just got a few mischievous tendencies. The fourth smiled in satisfaction. So I've heard. If you have the time, would you two mind giving me a tour of the village? A chance to be seen as one of the first to meet the long-lost fourth Hokage in his return to Konoha? We'd be honored. First, let's take you to see the food market. We could get something to eat while we're there. Mabuki smiled. Minato smiled back. I'll be meeting Naruto at the village gates at 10. Let's try to keep this compacted. Thanks so much for sparing the time. Kizashi nodded. No problem, the fourth practically beamed. So tell me what you know about him. Who, my son? The couple blanched. As Minato talked to the couple, people gathered around them, keeping a respectable distance. They chatted loudly. What's with the commotion? It's the fourth Hokage. Impossible, I thought he was dead. Let me see. I just heard them talking. He's definitely the fourth. He's so cute. Where's he been all this time? Holy smokes, it's the fourth Hokage. Seriously? A few people began walking up to them to express their thoughts and introduce themselves, opening the floodgates. People came in left and right, hoping to talk to the revered fourth Hokage. The return of one of Konoha's most beloved figures spread through the village in almost no time at all. Minato met with and talked to as many people as possible, detaching himself from his tour guides with an apology. If he was going to get used to living in the village again, it was best that the village got used to having him back. Looks like this tour isn't happening today. Naruto finished packing the few things that he need for the trip: a canister for water, a couple changes of clothes, some eating/cooking utensils, toothbrush, kunai, and a few snack rations. He took a longing look at the things he couldn't pack. Man, I gotta learn how to make those storage scrolls so that I can take more things, he thought sadly. As he made his way to the village gates, he noticed a large, dispersing bundle of people. Curious, he slipped into the crowd and walked up to a random nearby person. Hey, what's going on here? The woman was about 40 years old and had a kind, maternal look. She turned to Naruto and sneered. Scram. Naruto did just that. He turned to a nearby couple. The couple put on huge smiles as they saw him approaching them. Naruto. It's so great to see you. Naruto scrunched his face. Generally, when he approached someone, they were curt and concise. Other times, they treated him with utter contempt, but the worst was when they ignored him as if he didn't exist. The exceptions were few and far between. Usually, the strangers who treated him kindly had ulterior motives. Thus, the couple's apparent pleasure at seeing him put him on edge. Yeah? I don't know you. I was just wondering what was going on with the big excited crowd and everything. Oh, it's your father. The villagers are also very excited by his return. The woman smiled as if that explained everything. Naruto widened his eyes in an exaggerated show of surprise. He sighed inwardly. Lying to him and raising his hopes didn't even make for a good prank. It was just plain petty and mean. I knew they were up to something. The man spoke up in his lover's place. I've gotta say, Naruto, your father's return to Konoha is nothing short of miraculous. We're so happy for you. Sure, Naruto thought sarcastically as he resisted the urge to roll his eyes. If they thought he'd fall for such an obvious ploy, they were in for a surprise. Naruto gave a friendly nod to the man's platitudes. Thank you very much. I'll see if I can catch him. Bye, the woman waved with cheer. My name is Haruno Mabuki and my husband here is Kizashi. Tell your father we said hi. I will. Naruto nodded again, not really listening to their introduction. He leapt out of sight and made a shadow clone. Having been created with Naruto's thought processes, the clone needed no debriefing as it wordlessly went off to do what it was made to do. I hope they enjoy what I have in stock for them. The original thought with a smile before racing after the crowd. He still had a little bit of time. As the last of the stragglers began detaching themselves from his presence, a few stubborn adherents remained. He had a little under half an hour to get to the rendezvous point with Jiraiya-sensei, and at the pace he was going, he'd never make it. Minato had given the crowd a small speech to that effect, leaving out the details of his meeting to avoid being followed. Privacy is something he rarely had in public since he'd become Hokage, and his 12 years of absence has done nothing to lessen this problem. Now to deal with those more dedicated fans of his. He sighed. A pretty pink-haired woman held his arms stubbornly, and was chattering away about how her family had been saved by his sacrifice, and how she had fallen in love with him ever since. How old was she when that happened? 10 years old? I'm not interested. He said bluntly before having his other arm snagged by a very attractive blonde. Yandere-sama, if you're not interested in her, would you be interested in me? She sang in what was probably supposed to be a seductive voice. Please unhand me. The fourth looked her seriously in the eyes. He felt someone else grab him from behind, breasts digging into his upper back. I've been dreaming about you ever since hearing about your life. How you faced off against 1,000 IWA by yourself, how you stopped the Ninetales from destroying the village, and all the other amazing things that you've done, Minato-sama. The yellow flash struggled. He didn't want to be rude, but things were getting out of hand. Please respect my personal space and interests. I do not want to have to resort to. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened at the sight before him. A massive crowd of young women, at least 100 strong, came running toward him with fanatic grins on their faces. Within seconds, they occupied every space around him in a 10-foot radius. He squeezed his eyes shut and the image of his teacher, Jiraiya, appeared in his mind. This would have been a dream come true for him. In fact, I think this would have knocked him cold from sensory overload weight. Then something clicked as he recalled what he'd been told last night about Jiraiya's first encounter with Naruto. Minato's heart raced with excitement. He knew exactly what was going on. The swarm of girls disappeared in a puff to be replaced by over 100 identical-looking blonde boys. The women immediately around him simply disappeared in a puff of smoke. One of the boys walked up to him with an ear-splitting grin on his face. "Yandere Hokage, my name's Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm a huge fan. I've been dying to meet you." Naruto then performed a small bow. "How do you like my mass shadow clone sexy jutsu?" Shadow clones were popping out of existence one after another. The fourth finally allowed himself the smile that he'd been holding back. "Naruto, I've been dying to meet you too." It wasn't long before Naruto found out what was going on. Apparently, the fourth Hokage had made a miraculous return to the village. After thanking the man who'd given him the information, Naruto had continued his pursuit of the crowd. He'd managed to catch the fourth as he was delivering a small speech. The gears in his mind went spinning. "I've got to make a good first impression," Naruto grinned. "I know exactly how I can do that." Naruto ducked into a familiar alleyway that he'd found while escaping ANBU a couple years back and slid open a manhole. When safely concealed in the underground tunnel, Naruto created 100 clones, each transformed into a different-looking girl. Each girl was then sent out one by one, mingling seamlessly into the crowd. Naruto giggled proudly to himself at his own genius, and left last in the guise of an older, brown-haired variant of Yamanaka Ino. "This is gonna be fun," he thought as he slid the manhole cover back into place. Naruto was in for a surprise. His prank failed to prompt the desired reactions. The fourth had been completely unaffected by his jutsu. Even more surprising was the fact that the fourth was claiming to be his father. The man was Namikaze's Minato, the Yellow Flash, and the fourth Hokage, and the man was his dad. Naruto's shock became disbelief before finally settling on to acceptance. "Are you really my father?" he whispered. The fourth nodded. Naruto clenched his fists. "Where have you been all this time? Old man Sarutobi and Irika-sensei were some of the only ones who didn't treat me like dirt. People kept ignoring me, so I started pulling pranks to get them to notice me. Everyone hated me, even people I've never met before. It was like I was some criminal or something. If it weren't for the old man, I wouldn't have been allowed in the academy. Then, when I said that I wanted to become Hokage, everyone just laughed at me like I was stupid." A sob escaped his throat. "But I kept smiling because I was afraid that if I stopped, I'd become the monster they all said I was. I never stopped trying, but no matter how hard I tried, people just kept telling me how worthless I am and how I should just die and everything. I wished so bad for someone to protect me and to love me like a fierce mom and a stern dad or something to stop everyone from treating me like I didn't deserve to live." Naruto was babbling and he knew it. For some reason he couldn't stop crying. He had imagined meeting his parents ever since he understood the concept of family. He'd imagined his parents were captured by some evil organization, waiting for a chance to escape and return to their son. Sometimes he liked to think that his parents were some royal family who had lost him at birth and were still searching for him. Other times his imagination would take a darker turn, creating the image of parents who looked down on him with the same hatred and disgust he'd often seen on the faces of the villagers that he'd grown up with. He'd play through many scenarios in which he was finally reunited with his parents, no matter how cruel or loving he'd imagined them to be, and not a single one of them had him crying like a girl. Naruto ducked his head in shame as he rubbed an arm across his eyes to wipe away his tears. "I guess I'm crying because I'm so happy that you're actually here, that I actually have a father, and that you didn't throw me away because you didn't want me." Minato listened to his son with more than a little bit of shock. All the things he had been told about his son had run contrary to what he was hearing now. No one had really lied to him. He'd heard many things about his son: how he was a hard-working shinobi who aspired to become Hokage, how he managed to beat a genius Hyuga in the Chunin exams, and how he had subdued the Jinchuriki of Suna with the help of the chief of the Toad Summons, Gamabunta. Even Jiraiya, Naruto's godfather, had dwelt more on Naruto's training under his tutelage than on the boy's early childhood. He realized that anything he'd heard about his son before he became a genin were fleeting. All he really knew was that Naruto was a prankster who was raised in an orphanage and had been entered in the academy at 7 years of age, where he worked really hard and was able to pass along with other students his age. Minato stood shocked. He knew that expecting his son to be denominated a hero might have been a bit much, but expecting not to have his son grow up living in an environment of discrimination and hatred wasn't very unrealistic at all. More than the shock, however, was sorrow. He was greatly saddened by his son's plight, and felt sorry that he hadn't been there when he was needed most. An uncomfortable feeling settled in his guts. He was going to have some words with a few people. Letting none of these thoughts show on his face, the fourth knelt and pulled his son into a soft embrace. "I'm so proud of you, Naruto. Despite all the hardships you've faced, you've managed to become a splendid shinobi and a wonderful person. Don't ever change that." Naruto sniffed loudly. Minato detached from his son with a smile, his hands remaining on the boy's shoulders. "It's okay to cry." Naruto shook his head. He was done with crying. Instead, he smiled, giving his dad the same grin that he had on his face earlier when he first introduced himself. Kakashi-sensei told me he had a surprise for me waiting at the main gates. You were the surprise, weren't you? I guess I am. That Kakashi, you know he was my student, right? Naruto's eyes widened. Really? He never told us anything, Minato nodded. We still have to meet Jiraiya-sensei at the village gates. Why don't we get there early so that you have time to tell me what you know about him? What are we waiting for? Let's go! Naruto cheered enthusiastically. He turned and ran off in the direction of the village gates, forcing his dad to run after him. As he ran, his dad called after him. Naruto! Wait up! The boy smiled as he ran. Tears of joy raced out of his eyes. This was the best day of his life. Elsewhere, a man and a woman stood dripping wet and naked in the middle of Konoha's food market with only a few bushes to help keep whatever decency they had left. People stared at them with a mixture of expressions. Disgust, amusement, lust. The couple's faces flared red with anger and shame. The man grit his teeth. I hate that kid so much. I know, Kizashi. I know. The woman nodded in agreement as the two made the long trip back to their house. They talked for some time, stopping only at the behest of Naruto's growling stomach. I'm hungry. When's Ero-sennin going to get here? Minato shrugged. I was only told to be here by 10. Jiraiya-sensei is almost never late. Something important must have come up. Did Kakashi-sensei tell you to get here at 10 too? Minato nodded as Naruto took up a thinking posture. I know what happened. Kakashi-sensei is always a few hours late when he gives us Genin team meetings. He loves to make us wait. I bet he said for us to get here at 10 just to make us wait a few extra hours. That evil pedophile. Naruto's ended his speech by holding his growling belly and crumpling to the floor. The fourth resisted the urge to palm his face. Kakashi probably just wanted to give us some extra time to bond. That Kakashi, he could have just told us the truth. We could have gone somewhere to eat lunch. Now we're stuck here not even knowing when Jiraiya-sensei is going to arrive. Not giving voice to any of his thoughts, Minato smiled and pulled out 2 of the rolls of rice that he'd snapped together this morning. He extended one to the groaning boy. Here. Naruto eagerly snatched it and began wolfing it down. Minato chewed thoughtfully on the other one. I'm going to have to teach him manners from scratch. And then I heard, yo my cute student. Naruto covered his face with his hands and gave a disturbingly Kakashi-like eye smile. And I was like, what the hell? It's Kakashi-sensei. What the heck was he doing here? And then when I asked him, he was like, the boy once again became the spitting image of his Jounin-sensei. Do I need a reason to visit my cute little student? Naruto shivered. Minato raised an eyebrow. That's exactly what he did to me this morning. Really? Minato nodded. We can't let him get away with this. Of course not. We're going to prank him back to the academy. Naruto yelled. You'll help me, right? Minato smiled. Of course. Judging by where Jiraiya-sensei is planning to take us, we'll have a couple weeks to plan exactly what we're going to do to him. Naruto beamed. So what are you and Ero-sennin going to teach me on this training trip? What are we going to teach you? The fourth tapped his chin thoughtfully. I have something that you could work on, but I don't know if you're ready for it. I'm ready for anything you can throw at me. Naruto exclaimed with a confident smile. We'll see. What made you think this was a training trip anyway? Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion. Kakashi-sensei told me that Ero-sennin was taking me on a training trip. If this isn't a training trip, then what the hell is it? We're setting out to find Jiraiya-sensei's teammate, the Sannin Tsunade, to take up the role of Konoha's 5th Hokage, or Jiraiya is, and we're tagging along to help convince her to do it. Minato smiled. That Kakashi is so going to get it. After devouring the simple lunch of onigiri and eggs that Minato had brought with him, the 2 blonde shinobi began discussing Naruto's jutsu and fighting techniques. At noon, about half an hour after that, Minato began teaching his son the arts of hand-to-hand combat. When Jiraiya arrived at 1 in the afternoon, he found the 2 sparring lightly. Naruto could be heard loudly complaining. Dad, how do you even move so fast? A little chakra and a lot of practice. Minato's reply rang back clearly. Keep trying. The fourth turned to his mentor, his eyes and his voice a lot brighter than they'd been the night before. Jiraiya-sensei. You're here. Taking advantage of the distraction, Naruto charged his father without reservation. This time I've got him, only to be sent flying by a well-timed sidestep and a heavy forearm to the upper back and shoulder. Minato smiled unfazed. I take it you managed to convince them to take her? Yup. The Toad Sage nodded. He looks a lot better. Ero-sennin. You're late. Naruto leapt off the ground and scathed to stab an accusing finger into the air. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. We've been here since 10. Naruto glared. I never told you to be here at 10. I specifically told Kakashi that I'd be out around noon. If anything, you should have been here at noon the earliest. What? He told you to come at 10? Yeah. He did. Naruto voiced vehemently. Minato put a calming hand on his son's shoulder. We've got 2 weeks. Naruto nodded. The fourth then turned to his mentor. Shall we head off then, Jiraiya-sensei? The Toad Sage grinned. Those two are getting along quite well. Wonder what they're up to. Yeah, let's go. 200 feet from Konoha's main entrance, a crow sat pecking away on the steel sheets of one of the apartment's rooftop. It had been there since early morning, pecking away at garbage and shiny items. Its beady eyes watched as the distant image of the Sannin Jiraiya and the Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto, strolled out of Konoha with the newly returned 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato. The crow cawed loudly and flew into a concealed alleyway, disappearing in a flurry of feathers. A mile out from the village, the crow reappeared and leapt lightly onto the hand of Uchiha Itachi. The Sharingan user closed his eyes as the crow communicated what it had seen to him before disappearing back to wherever it had been summoned from. Kisame picked his ears. So can we go yet? Not yet, Itachi replied. He's left the village, but we should give him a few days to get further from the village before we go in. Fuck, I'm bored. The mist swordsman groaned. And Samahata's hungry, he added as an afterthought. Itachi remained silent, encouraging his blue-skinned partner to carry on. I don't see why we have to avoid him like this. I bet we could fight him. We're both S-rank nin, for crying out loud. Kisame turned to his partner, waiting for a response. Itachi decided to indulge him. That man is 50 years old. No ninja fights through and survives 2 wars and lives to that age without having been incredibly powerful. You seem to forget that he's also one of the Sannin. You've seen Orochimaru. Even I couldn't subdue him after his attempt to capture me. Our objective is to capture the Ninetales, not fight Konoha's strongest shinobi. Kisame tilted his head to the sky in frustration. I know, but FUCK. A few days? Really? How about we compromise? 1 day at most. 2, no. Itachi turned his Sharingan eyes to his partner's black ones. The 4th Hokage has recently returned to Konoha and is leaving with him. Kisame's eyes widened. Itachi continued without pause. If both the legendary Sannin and the Yellow Flash were to arrive, we'd be severely outmatched. 2 days is already pushing our luck, even with your overpowered Sharingan? Itachi was silent as a rock. TCH. Fine. Kisame conceded grudgingly, and the two were quiet for several minutes. Itachi meditated while his partner paced the forest floor, occasionally taking a few practice swings with his massive sword. Suddenly, the Mist Nin had a revelation. You better not have been using those Sharingan of yours for that argument. That's just cheating. The Uchiha smirked. You're the one who met my eyes. Kisame twitched. You petty bastard. Yuhi Kurinai balanced herself on the ledge of a bridge arching over the creek which ran along the edge of Konoha's more remote areas. To her side, walking on the bridge's mainframe, was the tall, black-haired son of the 3rd Hokage. We should get married. Kurinai leapt off the ledge, landing lightly on her feet. What brought this on? Asuma chewed on his unlit cigarette as he carefully weighed his response. One of these days you're going to get pregnant, the Genjutsu mistress scoffed. We haven't been that careless. It could happen. Asuma shrugged. Regardless, wouldn't it be nice if we could settle down, start a family together? They walked quietly for a few moments. Kurinai frowned. I don't know. What are you worried about? Let's say we do settle down and start a family. It's goodbye to my shinobi career until all our kids are old enough to take care of themselves. Then I might be too old or inexperienced to get back into the loop. The woman bit her lips. I'm just not sure I'm ready to commit to such a sacrifice, Asuma sighed. That's such an old-fashioned law. I don't see why we can't have other people watch our kids while we're out in the field doing work. What, and have a bunch of kids just to have someone else raise them? Asuma, what kind of family would that be? Shinobi work is dangerous. What if we died? Our children would be orphans. The 4th did it. Asuma chewed his cigarette gruffly. God, he wanted to smoke it so badly right now. He'd forgotten his lighter and neither had the correct elemental control to just light the thing with a fire jutsu without causing excessive damage to their surroundings. He was Hokage. Kurinai kicked a pebble into the water. You're not. The two walked together in amiable silence. They broached the subject many times before, but they just couldn't seem to come to a satisfactory solution. Both wanted to settle down, but neither were ready to throw away their shinobi careers. As the two walked, they saw another pair of people approaching them casually. Both wore matching cloaks specked with red clouds along with dark cloths shrouding their faces and identical straw hats. The shorter of the two tipped his hat in greeting. Excuse me? You wouldn't happen to know where we can find an Uzumaki Naruto, would you? Uzumaki Naruto, Kakashi's student and Jinchuriki of the Ninetales? Asuma smiled. Things were getting interesting. We might. Who are you and what business do you have with Uzumaki Naruto? We're friends of his. The masked figure drawled. If you could just kindly give us his whereabouts, we'd be on our way. We don't want any trouble. Asuma looked to Kurinai, who shrugged. She gave the masked man a smile. We wish we could help you, but we really don't give away the location of our village's shinobi to just any random stranger who asks for it. Especially strangers who try to mask their identities. Seems like something only missing Nin would do, you know what I mean? Itachi nodded as Kisame pulled the bandage-wrapped Samahata from his back. I see. Asuma had already shot a signal for assistance. With a nod, the two rogue Nin threw off the cumbersome hats and scarves they'd been wearing. Phew! I thought we'd never take those damn things off. Kisame cried with relief as his sword bore down on the bearded jounin. Asuma grunted under the force of the blow as he blocked it with his trenched knives. Hashigaki Kisame, Kisame grinned. That's me. Looks like I'm known even here. Itachi stood in place, analyzing the abilities of the two jounin before him. His gaze fell steadily on the woman, who was running quickly through the seals for a genjutsu. He countered it with his Sharingan, allowing the woman to believe that her illusion had worked as she stood trapped in his. The moment her jutsu went awry was the moment Kurenai realized that she'd been placed in a counter-illusion. She quickly bit her lips to dispel the illusory tree which held her bound in place to find herself staring straight into the three Tomo eyes of Uchiha Itachi. Itachi aimed a slow kick at her face before she could properly recover. Kurenai barely raised her forearms in time to block it but was still sent flying into the water. It was at this moment that Kakashi happened upon the scene. He quickly figured out what was going on, created a shadow clone, and rushed to the aid of his fellow jounin mentors. Itachi turned his gaze to the masked man. Hatake Kakashi. Copy Nin and user of 1,000 jutsus. Kakashi chose not to respond, his Sharingan eye already revealed. Asuma, Kurenai. Don't look the Uchiha in the eyes. Go get help. I'll hold them off. Oh really? Kisame gave a small laugh as Asuma and Kurenai raced off to signal reinforcements. He ran through several hand seals and summoned a massive water dragon from the river. Suetun, Suryudan no jutsu only to have it neutralized by an exact copy of it. You fucking jutsu thief. Looks like I'll have to deal with you first. Kisame turned to the copy Nin, but was stayed by his partner, Kisame. He's mine. Just watch. Itachi jumped into the water, sizing up his masked opponent. Kakashi dispersed his shadow clone. A 1 versus 1 match? How arrogant. The jounin smirked. Your Sharingan is powerful, but you forget I have one too. Your tricks won't work against me, we'll see. Tell us where we can find Uzumaki Naruto, and you will be spared. Kakashi responded by sending a fireball in the Uchiha's direction. Katon, Gakkaku no Jutsu, the most basic Uchiha technique, the missing Nin thought as he blew his own fireball to counter it. Kakashi used the cover of the fireball to dive underwater. As he prepared a water dragon, he saw several massive water sharks swimming toward him. Still standing above water, Itachi had his hand on the river's surface. Suetun, Gasho Kazami, Kisame frowned. That's my technique. Kakashi leapt out of the water, sending 3 kunai toward the Uchiha. Itachi threw double the number of kunai, deflecting Kakashi's projectiles with frightening accuracy. The rest flew toward the copy Nin who, upon seeing the movement with his Sharingan eye, wheeled through the air, dodging the kunai aimed at his navel and chest. The third one he caught in midair with lightning-quick reflexes before landing lightly onto the water's surface. Without a second's pause, Kakashi raised the kunai to parry a slash. Itachi had closed the distance between them with incredible speed. With the help of various chakra-induced propulsions, Itachi spontaneously sent his other hand rocketing into Kakashi's kunai arm. Unfazed by the loss of his weapon, Kakashi quickly twisted back, delivering 2 consecutive kicks toward Itachi's side. Itachi leapt up, dodging the kicks and sent identical kicks toward Kakashi's face just as the jounin was straightening from his previous maneuver. Kakashi ducked forward, as predicted. Itachi's right leg swung over Kakashi's head, but he changed the trajectory of his second kick, angling his left leg downward and landing it cleanly on the back corner of Kakashi's head. The blows sent the copy Nin tumbling through the water. Even though his Sharingan had given him the foresight to mitigate the otherwise fatal blow with a small layer of chakra, he still suffered a dizzying pain as he began feeling the symptoms of head trauma creeping in. Kakashi grit his teeth behind his mask. Damn. He cracked my skull. He raised his eye to meet the maddeningly expressionless face of Uchiha Itachi. Itachi's eyes bore into his. Only an amateur. Your Sharingan will always be just a mere imitation of the real thing. Kakashi furrowed his eye, unable to look away from the Uchiha's mesmerizing gaze. What is he talking about? Itachi's eyes swirled. Tsukuyumi Kakashi's world fell to pieces as Konoha took on dark, inverted shadings. Itachi's voice rang all around him. Allow me to show you the true power of the Sharingan. Suddenly, he felt something sharp plunge into his flesh. He winced in pain. This is only an illusion. Kakashi flared his chakra. Nothing happened. Another kunai sunk into his left leg. Kakashi fell to the floor in agony. His senses became unnaturally sharpened as a flurry of other kunai pierced his body. At the apex of his agony, the pain disappeared and the kunai were gone. Itachi's voice rang all around him. Allow me to show you the true power of the Sharingan. A kunai sank into his body. Kakashi ran as fast as he could. More kunai stabbed into his lungs, his stomach, his back, his arms, his legs, his feet, and his hands, pinning him into the ground before vanishing into the air. Allow me to show you the true power of the Sharingan. A creeping panic crawled over him as the horrifying scene repeated itself again. Shit, gotta get out of here, shit, shit. He fell, screaming in agony as the kunai once again began pelting his body and hammering him into the ground. Kakashi was defeated in a matter of seconds. While the Tsukuyumi only required several seconds of application, Kakashi was made to experience 70 hours of torture in an alternate universe. The Jounin collapsed, unconscious from severe mental trauma. Asuma and Kurenai arrived with Madogai in tow just as Kakashi fell face first into the water. Kurenai's eyes widened in shock at finding the immaculate Uchiha standing over Konoha's renowned copy Nin. Hashige Kisame was standing where they left him. That Itachi managed to beat Kakashi without receiving a single scratch? That's insane. They'd only been gone for a couple minute tops and had expected to find the masked Jounin battered but still standing at their return. Even with Guy here to join the fight, it was entirely possible that they'd still be defeated. She began to feel a crippling sense of fear. Never in her life had she felt so incredibly outmatched. How can they be so strong? Reinforcements. Itachi looked them over impassively. And likely more to come. We're not here to fight a two-man war against Konoha. Let's retreat. Kisame sighed and the two leapt off, racing back down the path they'd came from. After an hour of running, the two Akatsuki members finally stopped, their position relatively secure. A crow appeared and landed on Itachi's hand before disappearing in a burst of black feathers. My crow that had been following the Sannin tells me that Uzumaki Naruto apparently left with him on the trip, Kisame swore. Why the hell didn't it come back sooner? Its orders were to tail the sage, not to look for the Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto. It only came back because it was nearly killed after the yellow flash caught it spying on them in the town of Inazaku. Itachi replied in monotone. So we're heading to Inazaku next? Yes. Damn, we shouldn't have asked them for their Jinchuriki like that. Now they know what we're after. The leader's not going to be pleased if he hears about this. The Mist Nin scowled. If we fail to take the boy from both Jiraiya and the Yellow Flash, next time's going to be a huge pain in the ass. Itachi withheld a smile. I know. On the first day of their journey, the three adventurers set out with fresh energy, moving at a steady pace through the trees. Jiraiya led them since he was the one who knew exactly where they were going. We'll reach the next town in about 6 hours moving at this pace. We'll stay overnight when we get there. His students nodded. Naruto smirked. 6 hours is nothing. By the end of the hour, Naruto was starting to feel winded. They'd been jumping through the trees at brusque, ninja speed and had already covered over 20 miles. Naruto's face set in stony determination. Normally, he'd ask for a break, but he didn't want either his dad or Jiraiya to think him weak. If that old perv can do it, I can do it too. 4 hours into their journey, Minato, who held the rear, noticed his son beginning to falter. They'd covered nearly 80 miles. He leapt to the boy's side, paralleling his movement. Naruto, do you need some rest? No, I'm okay. Naruto shook his head, despite his obvious fatigue. Try concentrating chakra over your thigh and leg muscles before you leap. It'll help. Okay. Naruto nodded before picking up his pace. Minato smiled. He does work hard. Up ahead, Jiraiya called out laconically. Keep up. Jiraiya turned to his blonde minions as they walked into a village. The sun had already set about half an hour ago. This is Karakiro village. We'll stop here for the night. We should reach Inazaku tomorrow. That's the last town we'll be seeing for 2 or 3 days. Beyond that is the vast forest of trees that surround the nation of Konoha. We'll be heading a bit northwest from here and beeline toward Showa Town, a place known for its gambling, fighting arenas, saunas, and the Toad Sage gave a silly grin. Various other places. Naruto traipsed behind, too tired to even call the sage out for thinking perverted thoughts. Ero Sennin could be one hell of a tour guide if he wanted to be, when he's not busy being perverted. So the old lady you're looking for is in Showa Town? Yup. Jiraiya nodded. Just don't go calling her old in her face, unless you want to be sent flying. Minato yawned, stretching his arms into the air. Let's just find a place to get some sleep before we head out tomorrow. Both he and Jiraiya were operating on the 3 hours of sleep they had the night before in the old apartment. While the sage's years helped him to cope better with less sleep, the fourth wasn't quite at the stage where a few hours of sleep qualified as sufficient just yet. Without any more words, Jiraiya led his students to a small and where they were led into a small, empty room. He then went to relieve himself as Minato rolled out a futon on the empty floor. Naruto did the same and fell gracelessly onto the thin cushion. Good night, Dad. He mumbled. It had been a tiring day for him, both physically and emotionally. Of course, it was still the best day of his life, but loath as he was for it to end, Naruto was not immune to fatigue. He was asleep before he could hear his father's answering call. Good night, Naruto. Jiraiya came back to find the two lying side by side. He grinned. How adorable. He even forgot to place his security seals. He picked through his storage scroll. Now which one has the ink and brush? Ah, found it. He set the inkpot aside, uncapped it, dipping his brush into its bottomless depths. As he was starting to seal on a corner of the room, he heard a quiet voice drift to his ears. Jiraiya-sensei. Yeah? The crow, sharp as ever. Jiraiya shook his head in the dark. I'll take care of it. The sage finished the seal and moved to another corner. Jiraiya-sensei. God, he missed hearing that. Has 12 years really been that long? What's up? He turned to look at his long-lost student. The fourth hadn't moved an inch. I want to talk to you about Naruto. The voice paused. Tomorrow, all right. Jiraiya continued drawing his barrier seal. What about? He waited, but received no response. Both his students were fast asleep. The old sage shook his head with a soft smile. Sweet dreams. Jiraiya got up at 4 in the morning to find a crow staring at him from across the street through the window. Its beady eyes glowing unnaturally in the dark. He nearly jumped. Geez! Doesn't he have a less creepy way to signal me? The sage hopped lightly over the bodies of his 2 apprentices. He opened the window and, with a quick hand seal and a tiny flare of chakra, deactivated the barrier seal. He took one last look over his shoulders at the 2 sleeping shinobi still asleep, and propelled himself silently off the window ledge, landing next to the crow without a sound. Taking out some of the nuts he'd scavenged from the forest, he scattered them on the roof's wooden tiles for the large black bird. Morning, Kusakun. The crow nodded and ate a few of the nuts. My student noticed you following us in the sky. You should fly lower tomorrow. We'll be heading to Inazaku, so you don't have to worry about keeping us in your sights. The crow nodded its head to indicate that it had heard what the sage had told it. It snacked up one more nut before leaping onto the toad sage's hand. Jiraiya closed his eyes as it sent him the message, the crow's memories filling his head. Its mission done, the bird leapt off the sage's hand onto the roof to eat up a few more nuts, pausing only to tilt its head slightly at the spiky-haired human. Jiraiya nodded in confirmation. Good work. The crow pecked at a few more nuts and then flew off. Jiraiya woke them before dawn, his loud voice flooding the room. Rise and shine, kids. Minato sat up. Naruto groaned and covered his ears. Jiraiya grinned. Don't want to miss out on the morning training session, do we? Training? Training with the Jiraiya of the Sannin usually meant new awesome techniques. New awesome techniques meant getting stronger. Getting stronger meant becoming more badass and getting acknowledged. Naruto sat up immediately. Yes. Training. Minato smiled down at him as he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Morning, Naruto. Naruto turned to his father. He still couldn't believe that he actually had a dad and that his dad was the 4th Hokage. It had all happened so quick, but it already felt as if his dad had always been there with him. Morning, Dad. The scene warmed the toad sage's heart. Alright, you sleepyheads. Listen up. We're going to do some morning exercises, get some breakfast, and then we're heading out. But what about training? Exercise is part of training. Naruto pouted and muttered under his breath. You big, perverted liar. Jiraiya's grin widened. We'll be starting near the local hot spring. I heard the ladies like guys who work out. Naruto's voice became loud and accusing. You big, nasty, disgusting pervert. The 4th palmed his face. Don't encourage him. It turned out that in this village, the only people who went to the hot springs at 5 in the morning were really, really old people. Jiraiya hid behind a rock and scanned the spring below for any signs of smooth, supple skin. He frowned. Just my luck. Behind him, his students were going through some stretches. Naruto was ready to explode. He didn't care what his dad said about encouraging the man. This was wrong. Ero-senin. Jiraiya turned and tried to signal the blonde to quiet down. You are disgusting and gross and invade people's privacy, and you shouldn't be peeking like that. It's wrong, and the boy's tirade was interrupted by another voice. Oh, Jiraiya the Sannin. What a pleasure. We wouldn't mind if you joined us, would we, ladies? A number of voices croaked negatively. The sound of rippling water carried loudly as the women left the water. They could be heard approaching the rock behind which the sage was hidden, and a few probably former shinobi had already made it up to the outcrop. Naruto took one look and gagged. Minato stifled a giggle. The women pressed on. You were quite cute back in the day. I remember you had dashing hair and a nicely angled face. You wouldn't happen to still have that wart on your nose, would you? The sages laughed nervously as he started to panic. That's okay. I have some errands to attend to. Maybe next time. Oh, he's shy. How cute. Come here. The first of the women rounded the rock and gave the sage a lecherous grin. Oh my, you're still kind of cute. With a yelp, the toad sage ran like his life depended on it. He flew past his students, a flurry of words trailing behind him. I'll see you guys later at the other side of the village. Don't be late. By this time, most of the women had managed to climb the rocky outcrop. That ought to teach him a lesson. The lead woman smirked and turned to a speechless Minato. Oh hey, you're really cute. Voices began chiming in. He looks just like the 4th Hokage. Oh. He does. He even has the haircut. Well, the 4th was quite a fashion icon back in the day. A number of heads nodded in agreement. Minato backed away apologetically. I'm sorry to have disturbed you. I think it's time for us to go. Jiraiya-sensei will be waiting for us at the village's west entrance. I apologize for his behavior. He bowed before turning to Naruto, who was writhing on the ground, holding his stomach. Tears were falling from his eyes as he shook in involuntary spasms. Naruto. Let's go. Okay, hold on. Naruto choked. Minato waited patiently as his son gagged. His lips began to twitch. Whatever was happening to his son, it was dangerously contagious. They made good headway the second day of their journey, reaching Inazaku by early afternoon with only a quick stop for lunch before that. With the tip about chakra concentration he received the day before, Naruto was able to increase both his speed and endurance manifold. Who knew a little application of chakra to the limbs made so much difference? Naruto thought with confusion. Why didn't Kakashi-sensei tell us about this? Actually, looking back to the Chunin exam matchup between Sasuke and Gaara, he was sure that the masked Cyclops did tell them about it, or at least he did to Sasuke. There was no way Sasuke could move as fast as Rock Lee with just 1 month of training. 10 meters behind him, his father was having similar thoughts. What the hell, Kakashi? You couldn't teach my son something as simple as chakra sprinting? Sure, it was a waste of chakra without perfect or near-perfect control, but his son was an Uzumaki. Naruto was practically made of chakra, and that wasn't even taking into account the nine tails that resided inside him. Kakashi was one of the most perceptive human beings alive. There was simply no way that he could have missed the fact that Naruto had more chakra than nearly all of Konoha's genin put together. What if not knowing how to chakra sprint had gotten him killed? Minato frowned and mentally added this to the list of things Kakashi is going to hear about later. The trees whizzed past them in blur. Jiraiya grinned. Looks like I can pick up the pace. Yo! He called back without stop. If we pick up the pace, we can reach Inazaku by mid-afternoon. Then we'll have time to relax and look around. And I get extra time to check out the ladies. Wordlessly, the 3 Konoha redoubled their efforts with a burst of speed. The sage giggled. Oh yes. We'll have plenty of time. They arrived in Inazaku at 4 in the afternoon. Jiraiya rubbed his palms together in anticipation. You see those big blue tiles up ahead? That's the Inazaku Town Hotel. He reached into his pockets. Here's some money. Ask them for the viewing room. They'll know what you're talking about. Naruto scratched his head as his dad took the coins. But Ero-sen, what about you? Aren't you coming with us? I've got research to do. Jiraiya frowned. And stop calling me that. I still haven't forgiven you for what you did to me back in Karakiro. I'll be back in time for dinner. Without further ado, the sage disappeared with a shunshin. If he had stayed any longer, he would have heard Naruto's indignant reply. What? Forgiven me? I haven't forgiven you for leaving us there. You're the one who was peeping. Ero-sen. Erajiji. Naruto stamped his feet and glared at the spot where the toad sage was standing seconds ago. Many passers-by stopped to stare at the spectacle. Some saw the fourth and began to whisper. Hey, that looks like the fourth Hokage. Hey, it does. Minato palmed his face, gazing up in exasperation. As his eyes glazed over the clouds, he noticed a black speck circling loftily in the sky. The fourth frowned. The toad contract doesn't allow for any other summons, so I know that that crow doesn't belong to us. Either Jiraiya-sensei failed to take care of it, or it's an ally. I'm going to find out which. Minato reached into his pouch. Naruto. Naruto turned to his father, his anger abated. Huh. Take these. Minato pressed a 3-pronged kunai and the money he'd gotten from Jiraiya into his son's hands. You'll have to register at the hotel for us. I'll be right back. There's something I need to take care of. Why? Naruto took the money and the kunai. Where are you going? The fourth paused for a brief second before deciding that there was no point keeping his son in the dark. Someone's been spying on us. I'm going to try to find out who and why. Naruto nodded gravely. Okay. He pocketed the money and stared inquisitively at the kunai. How does this thing work? Minato took out a matching copy of the weapon that Naruto held in his hand and pointed at the tag wrapped around the handle. See this tag? Naruto nodded. It's a sensor seal with a 3-meter radius. I can sense everything within the seal's spatial parameters and position myself anywhere in that space at will. Naruto scratched his head. I don't get it. Basically, I can teleport to that kunai from anywhere at any time. Minato explained. Naruto's eyes lit up. Ooh. Okay. Got it. Why is it shaped like this? So that other people can tell it apart from normal kunai. Minato replied. Naruto examined the prongs. Why? The fourth licked his lips. It's a long story. I'll tell you when I get back, alright? Okay. Naruto nodded. Without another word, the former Kage sent his kunai flying up into the air. He disappeared instantly, leaving Naruto standing alone at the entrance of Inazaku's bustling main street. A few people chose this time to walk up to him. Hey boy. Was that man you were just talking to the fourth Hokage? I have something I need to do. Sorry. Naruto backed away apologetically before disappearing into the crowd. Hey. Wait. Ajino Chihiro yawned. She'd been working at her family's establishment ever since she was a little girl. The place was once a bathhouse, but about a year back, they'd started to receive various complaints from the customers about seeing a large, white-haired monster roaming the bathhouse ceilings and walls. The monster was most frequently seen around the bathhouse springs where people bathed. The staff never caught hide nor tail of this monster, and in spite of the management's attempts at catching it, the thing had never been apprehended. Even Chihiro's trap, consisting of several trigger nets, and one of the magazines she'd found in her father's desk, had failed to do the job. The ropes had been triggered and the magazine had been taken, but no monster was found among the nets. It was at this point that Chihiro's mother had decided that enough was enough. The Ajino family establishment wasn't going to harbor some peeping bathhouse monster. No way. No how. Soon after, Ajino Bathhouse became a hotel, and Chihiro its accountant, inventory manager, and front desk clerk during the afternoons. The renovation wrought many changes. They lost a lot of former bathhouse customers, and the once booming establishment was forced to operate on a loss for a while. They were forced to change the interior design of the complex, adding walls and roofs, knocking down former bathhouse structures to make way for living accommodations, etc. After weeks of construction, they'd finally gotten the place into better shape. The Ajino establishment was back in business as Inazaku's official town hotel. Funnily enough, the change in business models was the reason that they were finally able to catch the bathhouse monster. On the second day of the hotel's official opening, a tall, white-haired man walked right through the front door with a look of horror on his face. Chihiro, who had been working the desk at the time, had given him a customary greeting. "Hi. Welcome to the Inazaku Hotel. Can I help you check out a room?" She smiled as cheerily as she could. The man only stared, flabbergasted. How could you do this? This used to be such a wonderful place." At this the man fell to his knees, muttering incoherently. "My research, how could you?" Several people picked their way past him, and Chihiro turned her attention away to help set up rooms for a few customers. After the line of customers had been dealt with, she looked back to the man who was still kneeling where she last saw him. "Sir?" No response. "Are you okay? Can I help you with something?" The man stood up and straightened. "Actually, yes. I'd like to talk to the manager of the hotel. I can't leave this desk unmanned." Chihiro tilted her head, the smile still plastered on her face. "Is there a problem, sir?" The man nodded seriously. "Yes. There is a very big problem." Chihiro sighed. "Okay, hold on." She looked around for a few moments before spying one of the employees coming down the stairs with a bucket of water and a mop hanging over his shoulder. "Haku, could you get Mother? We have a guest who has something really important to tell her." The man raised a hand to the back of his head, ruffling his long, spiky white hair. "Well, it's not really that important." Haku deadpanned at the guest before responding affirmatively. "Right away, Ajino-san. Let me just return these to the storage room." "Okay." Chihiro replied, and Haku walked off. She began to examine the man. Long spiky white hair, green arms poking out of a red vest. "It can't be." "Sir? You wouldn't happen to know how to stick to walls and ceilings, would you?" The man gave a broad grin. "Of course. I'm a top-rate shinobi. The Sage of Toads, Wooer of Women, author of the Ika series, the great Sannin Jiraiya." The man squatted low, his palms held together over his head. Chihiro nodded. "Can I ask you for a favor?" Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. She took my introduction surprisingly well. The girl reached under the desk and pulled out a mask. Jiraiya pursed his lips. "Why does that look familiar?" Chihiro smiled. "Could you put this on for me?" The Wooer of Women scratched his head and decided that there was no harm in the request. "Sure." He nodded and took the mask, snagging it snugly onto his face. "I knew it." Chihiro's smile widened as her mother came strolling in through a side door. "Chihiro, who's the guest that's having issues with our services?" Her mother took one look at the masked Sannin standing in the middle of the lobby and stopped. "That's him. That's the white-headed monster, so that's why this mask was familiar." Crap. Jiraiya blanched and took off the mask. The woman marched toward him with a look of determination on her face. The Toad Sage stood dumbly as she took firm hold of his arm and pulled him toward the back. "Come with me." He turned his head to the desk clerk, begging her with his eyes to help him. Chihiro smiled. "I hope what you have to say is really important." Jiraiya's mouth opened and closed in shock. "You set me up." Chihiro nodded and waved. "Have a good day, sir." Jiraiya frowned as the hotel manager pulled him through to an office and closed the door aggressively. "You've got a whole lot of explaining to do." Jiraiya sighed and resignedly allowed himself to take whatever punishment that the hotel matron wanted to dole out on him. The woman began to run off about the harassment he's caused to the customers, the inappropriateness of his actions, the trouble he's caused, the expenses he'd incurred, and how she didn't care if he was some big-shot ninja, he was going to pay up. Jiraiya only heard half of it. His mind was still in disarray. "She set me up." The woman suddenly stopped talking. He nodded outwardly to show that he was paying attention. The woman rambled on about the terms of reimbursement. At least she was cute. The Sage of Toads would spend the next few months of his life working for the Ajino family. Back to present day, Chihiro stared sleepily at the clock behind her. It was almost 4. Her shift ended at 6. 2 more hours. The sound of ringing bells shook her out of her reverie. Stifling another yawn, she smiled cheerily. "Hi. Welcome to the Inazaku Hotel. I can get you a room when you're ready." "Hey Chihiro-san. Long time no see." The group that walked in the door moved toward the desk. After giving them their keys and directions, Chihiro turned tiredly to the clock. Only a few minutes had passed, she sighed. Normally she was a lot more energetic, but for some reason, she just didn't feel it today. She placed her head on the desk. So sleepy. Just as she was about to fall asleep, The sound of ringing bells snapped her up. She smiled. Hello? Welkin stopped. Whoa. A short blonde kid plowed through the doorway, followed by a small crowd of people. A rabble of words blared into the hotel lobby. Come back, you little piece of shit. This is the fourth Hokage we're talking about here. We have a right to know. It won't take too much time. Why are we chasing him again? Kid, I only want an interview. We've got him cornered. The kid ran all the way to the desk and jumped behind the counter, looking up at her pleadingly as he cowered behind the desk. Chihiro nodded and turned to the crowd. Hey! If you don't leave right now, I'm going to have you all written up for trespass. But what about the kid? Yeah. Shouldn't you kick him out too? Murmurs of agreement rustled through the crowd. Chihiro looked down at the kid before turning back to the crowd. That's up to the hotel's jurisdiction. Now if any of you are still in here by the count of 3, I'll be adding a charge of child abuse to that report. 1. A few people shrugged and turned back, others muttered unhappily, but followed. 2. The rest of the crowd filtered out, leaving one scruffy, middle-aged straggler, who leaned back, closing the door with a sigh of relief. Chihiro narrowed her eyes. Sir, you must be really stupid if you thought I was joking about those charges. Not at all. The man waved his hands through the air. I'm actually a customer. With that, his features literally melted, taking on a different shape. His hair lengthened, his skin smoothed, and his eyes changed from brown to blue. The man grinned. Chihiro gulped. Isn't he supposed to be dead? Thank you so much for your assistance earlier. The man inclined his head slightly. I hope you'll forgive us for bringing the crowd in. Dad. The boy jumped up, recognizing the sound of his father's voice. Why didn't you just teleport to the Kanai? You took forever. In the middle of that crowd? The man replied as he walked toward the desk. The boy paused. Oh right, the father shook his head. We'd like to take the viewing room if that is available. Of course, sir. Chihiro checked the register. She looked up, ignoring the little leap she felt in her heart as her eyes passed over the man's face. It is available. That'll be 800 ryo if you're only staying for the night. The man nodded. Naruto. The boy Naruto pulled out some coins, counted out the appropriate amount, and placed it on the counter. Chihiro smiled. And your names, please? Namikaze Minato. The man pointed at himself, and then at his son. He's Uzumaki Naruto. The boy exclaimed. Right. Chihiro brushed the names onto the roster. One other person will also be joining us later tonight. His name is Jiraiya. Got it. Chihiro's eyes widened. Wait, that Jiraiya? Depends on what you mean by that, Naruto chimed in. Do you mean it as in that pervert Jiraiya, or do you mean that as in that Sannin Jiraiya? Chihiro's brow furrowed in concentration. Both, Naruto grinned. Then yes. He's that Jiraiya. Chihiro resisted the urge to roll her eyes and smiled brightly. Well, here are your keys. I hope you enjoy your stay. Thanks, Nei-chan. Naruto snatched the keys and ran off. Chihiro watched him disappear up the stairs before turning to look at the clock. 4:20, she sighed, dropping into her seat. Taking out a small cup and kettle, she poured herself a drink. As she downed the water, her eyes met the cerulean blue ones of Konoha's former Kage. He was still standing where she'd left him. Chihiro let slip a tiny eep of surprise. She carefully placed her cup onto the desk and covered her mouth to stifle her coughs as the water slid down her windpipes. Cute. Minato smothered his amusement and donned a look of understanding on his face. You forgot to tell us where the viewing room is. Whoops, Chihiro flushed. I'm sorry, sir. Her mind went completely blank. The absolute worst possible time for this to happen. Hold on. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a random book of records and began flipping through it as she collected her thoughts. Calm down, Chihiro. Calm down. Ah, she exclaimed, pointing at nothing in particular. It's right here. 4th floor, the entire left side. You can't miss it, thank you? Minato nodded. I have one more request. Yes? Chihiro smiled professionally. What did I forget now? The fourth's eyes bore into hers. If it isn't too much trouble, I'd like this establishment keep our stay a secret. We want to avoid another incident like the one you just saw earlier. Chihiro nodded, unable to say anything more. Her heart fluttered traitorously in her chest. It will be very much appreciated. Thank you? Minato smiled and appeared in a flash near the kunai that he'd given his son earlier. For some reason, Naruto had run all the way up the stairs thinking that the viewing room would be on the top floor. Wow, you got up here fast. Minato commented. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Yeah, but that's the problem. The key doesn't fit. I don't think this is the right room, and I'm not sure where we're supposed to be going. Minato ruffled his son's hair. 4th floor. To the left. You can't miss it, Naruto pouted. Back in the lobby, Chihiro was smiling at empty space. Glad to be of assistance. And then she realized that Namikaze Minato, Yellow Flash and 4th Hokage of Konoha had magically disappeared. She turned to the clock, 4:24, and plopped her face onto the desk. Today's just not my day. Jiraiya checked the time. 10 minutes until 6. It was time to head back. The girl squirmed in his arms. Jiraiya-sama. Tell us more about the time you took out the giant, fire-breathing salamander. The other girl agreed. Yeah. We want to hear more about it. Jiraiya-sama, the Toad Sage laughed loudly. I would love to, but it's time for me to go. You don't like us anymore? The girls pouted and released his arms from their grasps. How can I ever stop liking you? Jiraiya grinned. I have important ninja things to attend to. I'll be back later. Save a spot for me till then. We will. The girls chimed. Come back any time. We'll be waiting. Jiraiya shook his head appreciatively as he left the establishment. What talent! He reached into his pockets and took out the small strips of paper that the girls had slipped to him while he held them tightly in his arms. He scanned the papers quickly. A faction of IWA was pushing for the fourth assassination. After all these years, they still wanted revenge. The Toad Sage clicked his tongue in a mixture of disapproval and disbelief. The old Tsuchikage, Inoki, had tried to talk down such notions, pushing for neutrality with every breath. On the surface, it appeared that he'd succeeded, but it wasn't going to be long before the younger generation, hot on the flames of revenge, began secretly sending covert assassination attempts into the Hidden Leaf. Chakra swirled blue in his hand, catching the bits of paper in its rotation and shredding them to tiny bits. Jiraiya frowned. I guess you don't just kill 1,000 IWA shinobi without leaving behind some desire for vengeance from their friends or families. With a body flicker, he arrived at the entrance of Inazaku's town hotel. The Toad Sage strolled in through the doors to the sound of bells and a familiar greeting. Good evening. Welcome to the Inazaku Hotel. The girl behind the desk sang cheerily before getting a better look at him. Her eyes widened. Jiraiya-san. Welcome back, yo Chihiro. The sage returned with equal cheer as he made his way toward the desk. You're prettier than ever. Chihiro narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms over her chest. And you're just as lecherous as ever. Jiraiya grinned. Have my students checked in yet? They have. Chihiro confirmed. They went out earlier to get some food, but they got back 30 minutes ago. Up in the viewing room? The girl nodded before the full meaning of the sage's previous words hit her. Jiraiya-san, I didn't know you taught the fourth Hokage. Of course. Jiraiya jumped up with a smile. With a poof of smoke, a large toad appeared beneath him, buoying him up near the ceiling. Chihiro grimaced at the familiar routine. Dear God. What have I done? The Toad Sage began hopping to the side on one foot with a hand extended forward. The toad, having quickly regained its bearings from having been so suddenly summoned, gazed sympathetically into Chihiro's eyes. I am the keeper of peace. Jiraiya flipped out 2 paper fans. The teacher of Kage, he twirled, his hair swirling through the air. Man among men flaring the fans open, he struck a wide stance. The legendary sage of toads. Jiraiya. The toad disappeared in a large puff of smoke, leaving behind wide, slimy imprints on the lobby floor. The man among men stood with a silly grin plastered on his face, his fans still raised high in the air. I'm sorry I ever said anything, Chihiro said with a sigh. The blot of slime began spreading across the floor. And you're cleaning that up, Jiraiya's grin faltered. That Gamma needs to stop hanging out in the swamps so often. Not giving voice to his complaint, the Sage of Toads began to make his way to the hotel's storage room. I'll get the mop. Jiraiya walked up to the viewing room that he'd helped in constructing a year back. He smiled at the thought. Brings back memories. He opened the door to be greeted by the voice of an irate blonde. Ero-senin. Where have you been? The sage turned his eyes to his older student. Minato smiled apologetically before glancing decidedly at his younger pupil. Naruto tapped his foot impatiently. Jiraiya smiled, amused. Why are you so mad at me all the time? Seriously? Naruto's eyes widened. Well, first, you act totally irresponsible and leave us to go off alone in order to look at girls. Second, you told him, here Naruto pointed at his father, all about my sexy jutsu. You completely messed up my prank. Third, you've been totally blowing off on training me. Fourth, you left us with all the old ladies after they found out you were peeping. That's totally messed up. Serves you right, the sage smirked. You're the one who got their attention. Fifth. The boy paused. Fifth, well, you do a ton of nasty things and you deserve to have people be mad at you. Naruto crossed his arms. Well, I have important things to do every once in a while. Can't blame me for that, right? Jiraiya laughed, gazing pointedly at Naruto's father. You're spoiling him rotten, he stated bluntly. Naruto ducked his head quietly. He didn't mean to shame his father. Minato shrugged. We were talking about pranks. Jiraiya put a hand to his face and gave an exaggerated groan. And here I was finally weaning him from that habit. Oh. The fourth quickly changed the subject. We got some food too. Jiraiya nodded. So I've heard. It's not ready yet, but it will be done in a few moments. Minato smiled brightly. Naruto's a great cook. Naruto grinned sheepishly at the comment. He'd lived alone most of his life and had learned to cook out of necessity. That does smell good. The Toad Sage took a deep whiff before turning to his younger student. How come you never cooked for me before? Naruto pouted and muttered under his breath. You never asked? You just assumed I didn't know how. He looked down. Thanks for buying me food though, Jiraiya smiled. A growing boy's got to eat. Speaking of growing boys, the fourth chimed in cheerfully. Naruto. You should go watch them eat. It'll take a while to cook, but you don't want it to get burnt. Make sure you're there to take it out right when it's ready. Naruto nodded and left. There was no way he was screwing up the first meal he's making for his dad. Minato dropped his smile. Jiraiya-sensei, the sage tapped his chin. This is about what you said you wanted to tell me the night before, isn't it? The fourth nodded. Did you know the first thing Naruto told me when he first realized that I was his father? Jiraiya shook his head, giving his student the signal to continue. Minato's voice felt placid as he recited his son's words from memory. Everyone hated me like I was some criminal, but I kept smiling because I was afraid that if I stopped, I'd become the monster they all said I was. Jiraiya sighed inwardly. He had an idea where this was going. The fourth continued, the strain clear in his voice. No matter how hard I tried, people just kept telling me how worthless I am and how I should just die. Minato grit his teeth and looked pointedly at his mentor as he headed into the last segment. I wish so bad for someone to protect me and love me and stop everyone from treating me like I didn't deserve to live. Silence hung heavy in the air. Minato gazed searchingly into the eyes of the man who he'd once considered to be his father. Realizing he wasn't going to receive a response just yet, he continued. He was crying. Minato bit back a sob. The pain I heard in his voice, tears of sorrow and anger rolled out of his eyes. His voice dropped dangerously low. It makes me want to kill them all for making him to suffer like that. It makes me wonder about my sacrifice. It makes me wonder if Kushina should have died at all. I could have taken her to receive medical care instead of chasing after the Ninetales. His voice took on a bitter, accusing tone. You could have told me where Tsunade was. As long as she was still in the Fire Nation, I could have brought her back in less than 10 minutes. Kushina might have lived. His mentor, his Jounin-sensei, his father figure said nothing. Minato snarled uncharacteristically. Konoha doesn't deserve the peace it has. Jiraiya furrowed his brows. Minato. You don't want to go there, don't I? The former Kage laughed. What are you going to do to stop me? I'm one of the most powerful shinobi alive. Minato the Toad Sage paused as he weighed his words carefully. The fear of Bijou and Jinchuriki is deeply ingrained into our culture, and the Ninetales attack greatly magnified that fear. You shouldn't blame the people for the ideals taught to them ever since they were born. They simply don't know any other way of thinking. Killing them won't cause the fear to go away. It will only create more fear and more hatred. If you want to create a world in which people truly understood one another, then you have to change their perceptions. That's the only way to create true peace. The fourth shook his head. You still could have taken him in and raised him as your own. Jiraiya gave his student a hard look. You know my life better than anyone else. I have to be constantly out in the field doing reconnaissance and maintaining my network. I wanted your son to grow up with people his age in a place he could come to call home, not in an environment of constant travel and strife. That's still better than what he went through, the sage shrugged. In hindsight, perhaps, but we couldn't have known that at the time. I don't want to hear any more of your excuses. The fourth whispered softly. He turned his back to look out into the streets through the room's clear glass walls. Naruto's words played through his mind on repeat. I'm going to hear what Kakashi has to say before I make my decision. Jiraiya nodded silently. It will have to do for now. Minato turned. I have one more thing I want to talk to you about. What is it? Jiraiya asked. It's about the crow. Minato replied. The Sannin feigned ignorance. I thought I told you to not worry about it. Easier said than done. Minato paused before continuing. I tagged it with a flying thunder god marker. Jiraiya hid his surprise under a mask of curiosity. Go on. When the crow desummoned itself, it landed on the hand of a man I don't recognize. The man next to him, however, had an immense chakra signature. It's on par with that of a Bija. There's only one person I know of who has such a reputation. Minato looked expectantly at his mentor. Jiraiya nodded. Hashigaki Kisame. The most powerful of the 7 Mist Swordsmen. I also know that he defected and joined a criminal organization known as the Akatsuki while I was supposed to be dead. Minato's face reflected the gravity of his words. The next time the man summons that crow, I'm activating the seal. Jiraiya's mind set in turmoil. Should he tell his student the truth? That Uchiha Itachi was his spy contact in the Akatsuki? That the man had only acted on the village's orders when he committed the Uchiha massacre? No. This is not my secret to reveal. If he doesn't choose to reveal it when they clash, then that's his prerogative. Organizing his thoughts in a matter of seconds, the Toad Sage decided to give his student his assent. I understand. Be careful. Of course, I don't plan on getting killed. Minato gave his mentor a grim gaze. But if I don't come back, please make sure my son receives proper care this time. I'll do that. Jiraiya nodded before turning away. Welp. I'm hungry. I'm going to go see how your son is handling the food. He walked to the kitchen door and pushed it open. How's the food doing? I'm starved. The pot stickers are ready. Naruto pointed at a black pot. You can take some if you promise to stop being a pervert. Jiraiya moved toward the pot and lifted its cover to the sight of a tantalizing pile of well-cooked pot stickers. He put the cover back on and turned to his younger pupil. Never. Well then, Erosenin? Naruto stood up with a satisfied grin and began pushing the toad sage out of the kitchen. You're just going to have to wait. Mato Guy raced forward as fast as his weighted legs could carry him. He dove into the water and slid his hands around his friend's midriff, lifting the man out of the water before he could drown. Asuma arrived behind soon after. Is he alive? Konoha's green beast swam to shore and laid his burden onto the grass that grew along the shoreline. He quickly checked Kakashi's pulse. He's alive. I'm taking him to the hospital. Without further words, Guy flipped the silver-haired jounin onto his back and disappeared in a burst of incredible speed. Kurenai remained standing where she was when they'd first arrived with Guy. Despite her years of shinobi conditioning, the genjutsu mistress was shaking with fear. It was a feeling she remembered only once before during the night the massive nine-tailed fox had plowed through their village, its suffocating chakra limitless beyond imagining. She took a step toward the other remaining jounin at the scene, her mental condition disturbing her balance. Asuma was by her side in an instant, holding her steady by the elbow. Are you hurt? Kurenai shook her head and collapsed into his arms. I felt so weak I was so scared. When I saw Kakashi defeated like that Asuma held her close but said nothing. Kurenai whispered quietly into his shoulders. How can they be so strong? Asuma shook his head. Some people were just born with greater talents. Konoha's Kopinin, Kakashi of the Sharingan and one of the village's top assassins had been one such person. Even before he'd gotten his Sharingan, the perpetually masked shinobi had been able to run circles around his peers. To watch such a man be beaten so easily was demoralizing to say the least. People like Uchiha Itachi simply made everyone else seem weak. I'm not sure I can do this anymore. The genjutsu mistress mumbled. That's just your fear speaking. You'll get over it, Asuma said comfortingly. If every shinobi gave up after facing a near-death experience, shinobi wouldn't exist. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Kurenai sighed. I'm so tired of all the death and all the fighting. Maybe we should settle down. Asuma gave her a squeeze in the back. I know how much you love your job. If you quit now, you're going to regret it later. I'd be okay with it if we quit together. We have enough money. We could start a business. Something peaceful, Asuma chuckled. And here just a few minutes ago you were saying how you weren't ready to let go of this career, and here I thought you wanted to get married. Kurenai pushed him lightly on the shoulder. Asuma smiled frankly. I still do. Then a flower shop would be nice. The Yamanaka already run one of those. You can never have too many flower shops. Kurenai laughed. But you don't know anything about flowers. I can learn. Asuma shrugged nonchalantly. Kurenai gave him a quick peck on the lips. We'll discuss this later. Let's go see how Kakashi's doing. The Sarutobi nodded. Let's go. Guy paced the hospital lobby rapidly. He couldn't stand still and they'd kick him out of the emergency room for it. Something about getting in the way. He frowned, the look contrasting his usual smile. Kakashi, please be okay. Kakashi, please be okay. Kakashi, please be okay. A medic Nin walked out of the room. Guy immediately grabbed her by the shoulders. How is he? Is he okay? Is he going to be fine? The medic winced. I'm not going to tell you if you don't get out of my personal space. Guy backed off quickly with an apologetic bow. The medic Nin nodded. He'll live. The man in green sighed in relief, but his mind's extremely unstable. He's suffering the worst mental trauma we've ever seen. Guy furrowed his brows. What does that mean? The medic shook her head sympathetically. It means he might never wake up. What? Is there nothing you can do? The medic frowned. I'm sure the Sannin, Tsunade, would have been able to do something for him. She could treat anything, but she hasn't been seen in the village in almost 20 years. Guy drooped, his arms hanging low near the floor. A voice sounded from behind him. So how's he doing? The green beast turned. Kurenai nodded in greeting. Sarutobi Asuma stood not far behind. The medic shook her head. He's in an indefinite coma, and only the Sannin, Tsunade, might be able to treat him. Asuma curled his lips. Just what the hell did that damned Uchiha do to him? At least they didn't get what they came for. Asuma sighed. The medic, curious, gave the jounin a searching look. And what did they come here for? Asuma gave Kurenai a look. She nodded. They asked for Uzumaki Naruto. They came to take the Ninetales. Uchiha Sasuke lay impatiently on his hospital bed as they ran last-minute checks on his body. I need to go. I need to train. The medic woman who had been caring for him ran a glowing green hand from his navel to his chest and then back. Sasuke frowned. Will you hurry the hell up? The woman smiled. If you're going to be rude, then I'm going to make you stay an extra 30 minutes for a full body scan and a cavity check. Sasuke's eyes widened. You can't do that, the woman gleamed. I am authorized to call for such a procedure. TCH. The Uchiha scowled but said no more. After several more moments, the woman let up and nodded. You're perfectly healthy. Sasuke rolled his eyes. The bones we mended are stronger than before, but the ligaments are still pretty tender. Try not to do anything stressful. Rest up. Eat well. I hope I never see you in here again. So basically stay healthy and stay out of trouble. Got it. Sasuke nodded as he pulled on his shirt. Yup. The medic grinned cheerfully. Sasuke gave a perfunctory bow. Thank you for taking care of me. The woman gave a similar bow, and Sasuke left the room. The medic sighed. The more time they spend out on the fields, the higher their chances of dying. She could never understand why they wanted to leave so impatiently. At least the hospital was safe. As Sasuke made his way out of the hospital, he saw a flash of green and silver. Mato Gai rushed into the hospital carrying none other than his Jounin sensei, Hatake Kakashi. The Uchiha gaped in surprise. Kakashi-sensei how? Slowly, he followed. I need to know what's going on. He kept his distance as they carted the masked Jounin into the emergency room. The man in the ugly green suit paced rapidly before a medic finally came out. Sasuke winced. Mato Gai was even louder than Naruto. On the other side of the hall, Sasuke recognized the two other Jounin who came in, Sarutobi Asuma, son of the third Hokage, and Yuhi Kurinai, Konoha's Genjutsu mistress, leaders of Genin teams 10 and 8 respectively. Their voice carried down the hall. He's in an indefinite coma and only the Sannin, Tsunade, might be able to treat him. Just what the hell did that damned Uchiha do to him? Sasuke's mind went off. Itachi. He was here. Just what did they come here for? They asked for Uzumaki Naruto. They came to take the Ninetales. Wordlessly, Sasuke slinked off. He already knew where Naruto was going. Kakashi had told him when he asked 2 days ago. Uzumaki Naruto, son of the fourth Hokage, was traveling with his long-lost father and the Sannin, Jiraiya, to Showa town to retrieve the other Sannin, Senju Tsunade, for the Hokage position. If he found his orange friend, chances are, he'd find his brother too. Itachi had beaten Kakashi, but the Jounin didn't have the full Sharingan like he did. Sasuke smirked grimly. He's not an Uchiha. Only an imitation. Plus, I've already mastered his signature move, the Chidori. I can win. The Uchiha grit his teeth as he sped through the streets. Mother. Father. Just you wait. Your son is about to avenge your deaths. Jiraiya's story time. Jiraiya opened his eyes at 4 in the morning, as usual. He sat up quickly and stretched. Rolling up his futon, he walked into the common room to gaze out into the streets. The viewing room was named for the glass walls that surrounded it on all sides. The streets could literally be seen from the 4th floor hallway. Even the floors and ceilings were transparent. Jiraiya looked up and sighed. The room above them had been covered wall to wall with extensive straw mats. Used to be able to get quite a nice view from down here. He had lived here during his tenure as an employee of the hotel, having helped design and build the room himself. One day, a couple had rented the room above and had thought the glass room below to be quite creative. They'd even waved down at him in greeting. They were quite a nice couple. And then, as the night progressed, they'd forgotten all about the glass room below and the man who lived in it. He'd made good progress on his research that night. In fact, he'd been so dedicated to his research that he jumped up onto the ceiling and stuck his face on its glass surface to better examine his research material. He was caught soon after. Having a face staring from the bedroom floor was not a very pleasant experience at all, and the couple had angrily gone to management to complain, securing several apologies and another room free of charge. He was also given an ultimatum. Ajino Yuko refused to feed the resident sage until he swore off his filthy habits. He'd worked 3 days and nights without food. By the 4th day, he was slowing down considerably, giving less than half the amount of labor he'd normally been able to provide. Chihiro had taken pity on him and begged her mother to feed him. As he was working on building the 10th floor that day, Yuko went to visit him with a plate of steaming porridge topped with eggs, a cut of fish and soft shoots of bamboo. He'd went up to her with his eyes glued to the food, resisting the urge to simply snatch them from her hands, and greeted her as cordially as he could. Taking one look at his sallow face, the hotel manager asked him once more if he'd swear off his habits. He'd shaken his head weakly, and Ajino Yuko relented with a sigh. He'd promised to keep his eyes off the customers, and was promptly handed the bowl. Jiraiya smiled in reminiscence. It was totally worth it. 5 in the morning, the Sage of Toads barged into the room in which his students slept. Rise and shine, sleepyheads. The 4th sat up and poked at his son who refused to be woken. Naruto. Time to get up. Naruto rolled away off his futon and curled tight. Minato looked to his mentor and shrugged. Jiraiya nodded. I'll be waiting outside. And promptly left. Making his way to his son on his knees, the 4th grabbed and shook him by the shoulder. Naruto. We need to get ready to leave. Naruto pulled his cover over his head. Dunwana. Minato smiled and clawed his son in the belly. Naruto jolted and laughed. Noa ha ha ha, stop, ha ha, I am up. Minato stood up and made his way to the door. Get dressed. We'll be waiting outside. Naruto pouted as the door closed, muttering under his breath. What the hell was that? He was supposed to wake me up nice and gentle and slow. He yawned, rubbing the remnants of sleep out of his eyes, and shambled out of the room. The 3 went through the same morning routine as they did the previous day before packing up. They headed down at 7:12 in the morning. The woman at the desk smiled. Jiraiya-san. Good morning. It's good to see you again. The sage nodded. Good morning. It's good to see you too, Yuko. Come back any time. She cheered. Yup. Jiraiya began strolling out. As he walked past the woman at the desk, Naruto stared. Nei-chan, how'd you get so old? Minato closed his eyes. He didn't just ask her that. You've got the wrong person. The woman smiled sweetly. I'm Chihiro's mother. Oh. Naruto backed away. He could hear the distaste in her voice, however much the woman tried to sugarcoat it. Well, by then, he quickly ducked out the door. Minato, being the last to leave, bowed. Thank you for the accommodations you've made for us. The woman shook her head. No problem at all. We're honored to house such a distinguished guest. You're welcome to come back anytime. Oh, I almost forgot. She reached under the desk and pulled out a box. This is for you. Minato walked up and allowed the woman to drop the box in his hands. What is it? It's for the road, courtesy of the establishment. Yuko smiled. My daughter made it herself. He slid the cover open to the sight of several balls of rice. You're too kind. The woman shook her head. Not at all. It's for old time's sake. That Jiraiya hasn't eaten our cooking in almost a year. Remind him to come back more often. I will. Thank you. Minato nodded and swiftly walked out. Yo! Jiraiya smiled in greeting. Flirting with the lady? Minato rolled his eyes. Let's just go. Naruto jumped up. Where are we going? The fourth looked down at his son. Through the forest straight north-northwest. We won't be seeing any towns or villages for at least 2 days. Are you ready? Naruto nodded. Definitely. Well then let's go. Ding, the timer clicked. Fish is ready. Yuko waltzed over to the pan and propped the fish onto a plate. She checked the pot next to it, talking to herself all the while. Not ready yet. Shouldn't be too long. She washed her hands quickly at the sink and sat on the kitchen stool, turning her mind elsewhere. Naturally, her thoughts fell to her daughter. Ajino Yuko was only hotel manager by name. Her daughter was the one who practically ran the place from inventory to funds to resource and labor management. Truly, she was proud of her daughter. Yuko sighed. Now to do something about her non-existent love life. A sudden clatter pulled her out of her thoughts. The soup had boiled over and the cover had been pushed off the pot by the mounting heat and pressure. Whoops! Yuko leapt off the stool. Soup's done. Chihiro passed out the plates and utensils while her mother made the food. A large man lumbered in just as she finished. Hey father, Ajini Akio yawned. Hey Chihiro. Your mother making lunch? Chihiro nodded. She should be done right about now. A voice suddenly floated down into the room. Honey! Come help carry the food to the table. Akio scratched his belly and mumbled under his breath. How did she know I was here coming, sweetheart? He promptly walked off. Would you like some more soup, father? Ajino Akio laid back and put a hand to his stomach and sighed happily. Nope. I'm stuffed. What about you, mother? The woman smiled. That's okay, Chihiro. I can help myself. They sat silently for a few moments. Mom? Yes, dear? What if I were? Chihiro hesitated, piquing her father's interest. The man sat up and leaned forward. Do continue. Yuko backhanded his guts. Stop it. You're making her nervous. His belly jiggled. That's what dads are supposed to do. Chihiro's face fell. Never mind. Oh no. Ignore your father. He's just messing with you. You haven't killed anyone, have you? Chihiro shook her head, and her mother smiled. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. That's right. Her father stood up with a grin. We're your parents. You can tell us anything. They waited expectantly. What if I told you I were in love? Oh. Her father sat down with a sigh of relief. I thought you were going to tell us that you were a LOW. What was that for? Stop it. You don't get to talk. Yuko pinched him again, ignoring his complaints. She gave her daughter a smile. Well, dear, I tell you that it was about time. The girl gave her a questioning look. Yuko sighed. You know your mother had plenty of suitors by the time she was your age before she found your father, but look at you. Working at the hotel all day. I was starting to get worried. You need to go out, find someone to share your life with. She paused. So who's the lucky boy? Is it Haku? Her daughter looked down and shook her head. Yuko bit her lips impatiently. Well, whoever it is, it better be someone worthy of our amazing daughter. Yeah. Someone like me. Her husband burst out, unable to keep silent any longer. I'd roll over and die before I let my daughter go out with someone like you. Yuko poked the man in his belly. You let your daughter work herself to death while you sit on your fat ass all day, Akio scoffed. I do not. Yes, you do. Yuko continued to prod her lover's belly. You used to be quite handsome too. Her husband smiled broadly. What are you talking about? I'm gorgeous. Chihiro silently stacked the plates and carried them to the kitchen. And I'm the Hokage. Yuko rolled her eyes. Look at how fat you've gotten. Akio patted his guts. I eat like a man. You certainly sit around like one. You can't expect your daughter to do everything around here. How is she ever going to be able to find someone stuck in this place all day? Right, Chihiro? She turned to her daughter, but Chihiro was already gone. Look! Akio grinned. You scared her off with your nagging. His wife jabbed a finger in his chest. Don't even get me started. Now go to your room and get dressed. You have a meeting with the suppliers this afternoon. I know. Geez. I'm going. He turned away, muttering under his breath. Pushy woman. A sweet voice rang out from behind him. What did you say? He rolled his eyes. I said that you were a pushy woman. You're goddamn right I am. A couple hours after the meal, Chihiro stood behind her desk at the lobby. Her thoughts cycling through on repeat. Namikaze Minato. The charismatic fourth Hokage of Konoha. A major figure in the Third Shinobi War. Died 12.5 years ago after stopping the Ninetales from destroying the capital. Chihiro remembered that night very well. Most everyone did. There was a sort of pressure in the air, and the town had undergone a series of small earthquakes. He had a wife too. She couldn't remember her name and a son. Chihiro flipped through the records book listlessly. I don't stand a chance. She snapped the book shut at the sound of ringing bells. She smiled. Hi. Welcome to the Inazaku Hotel. Chihiro felt an instinctive jolt of fear as the two men approached her. One of them was even taller than her father, and had unusual blue skin. The eyes of the other glowed a demonic red. Can I help you? The red-eyed demon nodded. Has the fourth Hokage been here? Chihiro frowned. That was supposed to be a secret. I'm sorry, sir. I'm afraid I can't help you. She stared, mesmerized, into those glowing eyes. Itachi bore his eyes into her brown ones. She's lying. And tore her mind apart. Where did they go? The lights faded from the girl's eyes and she smiled into the air. Jiraiya-san said they were going to Otafuku. He said that it'd be 2 days before they got there. Kisame grinned. Alright, let's go. The two turned brusquely and walked off. Chihiro collapsed, her mind falling into pieces as she succumbed to darkness. After having traveled for 4 hours, Jiraiya called a stop. It was time for a midday meal. They quickly devoured the box of onigiri they'd gotten for lunch. Jiraiya-sensei. The sage turned his head, his mouth full of rice. What exactly is your connection with that hotel? Oh. Jiraiya swallowed the rice. I used to work for them. What? Really? Naruto jumped up, spewing rice into the air. A few landed in the Sanin's face. Jiraiya wiped his face slowly. Yes. Really, what was it like? Naruto gave a mischievous grin. I bet you perved on that Nei-chan who worked behind the desk yesterday, the Toad Sage scoffed. I did no such thing mostly. She's the manager's daughter. Now that woman would have destroyed me. Minato tilted his head. That girl was the manager's daughter? Her name's Chihiro. Jiraiya took another bite of his onigiri. And the woman you saw this morning is the manager herself. Her name's Yuko. I didn't tell you? Minato shook his head. The sage grinned. Fearsome woman, isn't she? Yeah. Naruto nodded vehemently. She sounded super angry even though she didn't. I thought she was gonna cook me for lunch or something. Minato shrugged as he chewed his own mouthful of rice. I thought she was nice. They'd stopped moving at dusk. The sun was about to set, and they needed to set up a perimeter before night fell and it became too dark to see. They finished the last of the onigiri and downed the rest of the water that they'd gotten from a nearby stream before finally getting ready for sleep. I don't want to sleep. Naruto stalked around glumly. I want to make a campfire. They'd traveled far that day. They were over half of the way out of the forest under his father's guidance. Naruto was improving his stamina and control immensely. We might even reach Otafuku by dusk tomorrow. Jiraiya mused. None of them were really tired, so they'd gathered rocks, sticks and logs and set up a fire. Naruto stared, fascinated, into the flames. His father sat to his right with a contemplative look on his face. Jiraiya sat across from them, poking the fire with a stick before declaring loudly, "Let's tell stories." I'll go first. Naruto sat up attentively, and the fourth turned his gaze to the white-haired Sannin. Jiraiya, being a natural storyteller, launched into a gallivanting tale about a princess from the land of ice. By the end of the story, Naruto was in tears. As she just died? His voice filled with wonder and sorrow. Jiraiya nodded. There was nothing she could have done. The poison had reached an advanced stage. At least her nation was saved. She did a great thing for her people. The Toad Sage looked pointedly at his older student. Minato gazed into the fire and said nothing. Naruto sniffed and nodded. Yeah. She did. With a satisfied nod, Jiraiya threw his stick into the fire. Naruto. Your turn. Naruto grinned. Well, this happened to me when I was a kid. Jiraiya smirked. You're still a kid. No, I'm not. Naruto pouted. Anyway, you know how the villagers used to treat me like trash, right? Minato sat up. His son had his full attention. Happy at having caught his father's interests, Naruto continued. Well, most of the village actually just ignored me. I mean, really ignored me like I wasn't there. So I got some ropes and pulley and I climbed up to the Hokage monument. No one noticed me, which for once was great because I also brought 10 buckets of paint. Naruto sat back as he rummaged through his memories. I loved that day. I was there all the way into the afternoon before they finally caught me. I painted the first Hokage with funny eyes and a fat nose, and I made the second Hokage look really old, or at least I tried to. I gave old man Sarutobi whiskers and made him look like a monkey. He paused. Minato smiled. And what did you do to the fourth Hokage? I was making you look like a girl. Naruto smiled sheepishly. Jiraiya sniggered silently as he picked up another stick to prod the fire with. But I only got the lipsticks on before they found out what was going on. His father nodded. What did they do to you? Naruto pouted. The old man made me clean it all up, which was really a shame. They should have left it up for at least a week. But the best part of it was that everyone knew that I was the boy who painted the Hokage monument. He pointed at himself proudly. They even wrote an article about it. Our son is so adorable. Minato grinned before turning a pensive gaze into the fire. And what do you think about the villagers? Well, Naruto followed his father's gaze and turned to the fire, rubbing his arm thoughtfully. Some of them are really mean and some of them are scared because of the Ninetales, but some of them are really nice too. Like Iruka-sensei would buy me ramen, and old man Tucci and Ayame always treated me nicely. They make really great ramen too. Old man Sarutobi was also really nice. Naruto frowned, muttering quietly. Why did he have to die? Minato put a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. Everyone dies. He died protecting what he believed was important to him. That counts for something. He looked across at the Toad Sage. Doesn't it? I guess. Naruto said quietly. Jiraiya threw another log into the fire. Yo! Getting a bit gloomy here. Minato, why don't you tell the next story? Minato nodded. Naruto. What do you know about your mother? Naruto furrowed his brows in concentration. She was married to you, Minato laughed. Yes. She was, but she was more than just married to me. Naruto sat up. What was she like? Hold on, let me tell the story. It was almost midnight. They'd turned in several hours ago after a few more rounds of stories. Jiraiya laid on the ground, staring up over the forest trees into the starry night sky. Nearby, his students breathed softly as they slept in the comfort of the sweet, evening air. The gentle sound of cicadas rustled out of the trees and brushes, filling the darkness with its cry. The forest life thrived happy and untouched, completely unaffected by the conflict that happened around it at a regular basis. These creatures of the forest had done what their human counterparts could not do. They'd achieved peace. Unlike cicadas, who filled the night air with soft music, shinobi spent their nights leaving behind nothing but death, which in turn fed the fires of fear, vengeance, and despair in a never-ending cycle of hatred. The death of thousands of Konoha citizens at the hands of the Ninetales 12 years ago lit all these emotions in one massive blaze. Where once Jinchuriki were accepted as part of human society, as was with the case of Uzumaki Kushina after years of servitude to the village, there was only hatred. More than hatred, it was the fear of the incomprehensible power that had been unleashed in the village that night. It was the despair at the feeling of the inevitable doom as they cowered from a monster terrible beyond imagining. And then, when the monster had been subdued, the mounting fear and despair, refusing to simply vanish, developed into a new, ugly desire, the desire for vengeance. Countless people died that night. Homes were destroyed. Friends were lost. Family members were sent to early graves and lovers were torn apart. Despair gave way to anger. They'd lost so much. Something had to pay. They turned their hatred toward the person in which the Ninetales resided. They directed all their hate towards a child. If the boy suffered, they thought maliciously, the Ninetales suffered with him. Still, the fact that the object of their torment was only a child was not lost on them. Some chose simply to ignore him. Others, the ones blinded by their desire for vengeance, went so far as to convince themselves that the boy was the Ninetales to ease their own conscience. Gone was the acceptance that Namake's Minato had pioneered for his wife, the Jinchuriki of the Ninetales during his tenure as 4th Hokage of Konoha. Hatred, despair, fear, and vengeance were ugly, but also incredibly strong. So strong, in fact, that the people had allowed it to cloud their understanding of the pain and sorrow that they were causing. Only a sane few were able to see Naruto for who he was, just another human boy. It was people like Umino Iruka who, despite having lost both parents to the Ninetales, were eventually able to look past their own pain and hatred to give the boy what he deserved. Fair treatment. Iruka's attitude caused people to distance themselves from him, as they did with those who associated kindly with the demon fox. Despite the pressure, the man had refused to allow the opinions of his peers to sway him from what he saw as right, and he nearly died for it. It seemed almost impossible to believe that Naruto's Iruka-sensei had once been one of the people who had pelted the boy with rocks, calling him names and threatening his life. Every single person in Konoha who contributed to that ugly thing that was Naruto's childhood had the potential to see the truth. Each and every single one of them could be swayed to understand. And Minato, former 4th Hokage and hero of Konoha, had threatened to simply kill them. Jiraiya sighed. Minato was allowing himself to be consumed by the same hatred and the same desire for vengeance that the villagers had felt toward the Ninetales. Every single one of them were human beings with people that loved them and people they loved. Every single one of them in Umino Iruka waiting to happen. The forced hatred was clouding a fact that he knew to be true, that they were just like him, human beings. The civilian father loved his child as much as the 4th loved his. They were the same. If he killed the father, the child would be the one to bear the pain. The same went for the civilian's wife, family, and friends. If, by some impossible chance of fate, they somehow avenged the man, then the pain would fall to Naruto. God forbid the boy turned to vengeance. What irony. The Toad Sage smirked morbidly, and raised his hand up into the air as if to reach for the stars. Even now, under those very stars, IWA assassins were making their way toward the borders of the Fire Nation, their sole purpose to put an end to the life of the man who'd killed so many of their compatriots during the Third Shinobi War. Understanding forgiveness, it all seemed like an impossible dream. When will the cycle ever end? This sucks. Kisame sat on a rock as he contemplated his situation. There's no way in hell we're going to beat both the Yellow Flash and one of the Sannin. I thought you liked fighting strong opponents. Itachi stopped and stared placidly at his partner. The shark man rolled his head up to the sky. He killed 1,000 IWA during the war. In a single day. By himself. Alone. All strong opponents have weaknesses. Itachi noted calmly. Yeah. The Sharingan. Kisame smirked. Use the Sharingan, steal every jutsu and solve every problem. Knock out any opponent in 3 seconds? Look them in the eyes. Too easy. The shark man swung his sword half-heartedly through the air. Where the hell did your crow go anyway? The fourth put a seal on it. Itachi replied. Why didn't he tell me earlier? Kisame scowled. So what? You can't summon that thing anymore? No. Itachi looked on with half-lidded eyes. It's most likely the Flying Thunder God, his signature seal. Flying Thunder God, the shark man scoffed impatiently. What the hell does that even mean? I wasn't born in Konoha like you. Itachi continued staring down at his partner. Kisame's eyes remained in the clouds. I'll tell you later tonight. We need to move. The shark man sighed and stood up. You enjoy keeping me stupid, don't you? No. The Uchiha's voice betrayed no emotion. I do not, which implies that you are keeping me stupid. Kisame frowned. I can't even tell if you're being sarcastic or not. Dad, wake up. Naruto poked his father in the stomach. Ignoring the urge to laugh, Minato rolled over away from his son and pretended to still be asleep. Now's my chance to get him back. Naruto grinned and moved his hands to his father's sides. Minato smiled, refusing to react to his son's touch. Slowly, with great control, he turned, muttering in a sleepy voice. You know I'm not ticklish, right? Naruto stopped. Seriously? That's not fair. Yup. The fourth nodded. You're going to have to find some other way to wake me up in the morning besides tickling. Naruto pouted and sat thoughtfully. There's gotta be something. It worked. Minato grinned. He stood up. It's still early. Look, Jiraiya-sensei isn't even awake yet. Naruto snapped out of his thoughts. That's why I'm waking you up. We just gotta prank him. The fourth examined his mentor's sleeping form. What do you have in mind? Naruto beamed. Well, Erosenin's a huge perv. I bet we could knock him out with a good sexy clone. Minato smiled. Haven't you done that one already? Naruto nodded. Works all the time. I'm not exactly sure I'm comfortable with him looking at you that way. Why? They're just shadow clones. Naruto pouted. Even if they're shadow clones. Minato sighed. You do know that everything your shadow clones see and do become part of your memories when they disperse, right? Really? They do? He paused and thought. Oh yeah, they do. Are you serious? Minato frowned inwardly. Listen, I've got a better idea. Naruto pouted up at his father. I still think the mass shadow clone sexy jutsu would have been a good idea. He's so cute. Minato smiled softly at his son's displeasure. How good's your hench? I'm super good at it. Naruto beamed proudly. Minato nodded. I want you to make 8 clones of IWA. Naruto complied instantly. Minato made 2 copies of himself. When he morphed into an IWA, he hinged a kunai into the other clone's head. You'd do something similar. He whispered. Naruto grinned and pinned a clone into the tree with a kunai in the hand, head and heart. Oh, this was going to be fun. Minato began making his way to Jiraiya's still sleeping form. Dad! What are you doing? Naruto whispered loudly. Minato shook his head and put a finger to his lips. Naruto nodded. Right. Turning back to his somehow still asleep mentor, the fourth laid his palm softly onto the man's chest. The rays of a seal flowed out through his palm. He stood up a second later, giving a satisfied nod at his handiwork before heading back to his son. I've got another Flying Thunder God marker in Konoha, right above my bed. Naruto's eyes widened. Then that means yup. Minato smiled. He put a hand to his son's shoulder and they vanished, leaving the sage of toads lying alone in the middle of a vast forest. Jiraiya woke to the sound of loud chattering. We finally got him. The bastard. Now they can finally rest in peace. The sage sat up to his worst nightmare. Minato lay crumpled against a tree, a kunai in his head. And Naruto. Jiraiya grit his teeth as the one of the killers turned around. Oh. There's another one. How the hell did you miss him? I don't know. I'm sorry, boss. The boss grinned. Doesn't matter. We'll get him too. If we can kill the Yellow Flash, we can kill anyone. The others cheered and raced toward the angry sage. Jiraiya palmed one in the head just as it reached him. It disappeared in a puff of smoke. What a clone! 2 more came after him. One with a flying kick and another with a diving tackle. With no time to think about what just happened, Jiraiya jumped up, dodging the tackle and deflected the kick with his forearm, jamming his fist into the Iwanin's face as the man slid forward from the momentum. Falling back to the ground, he crushed into the back of the dive tackler. Both disappeared in a puff of smoke. What the hell? In Minato's apartment. Aw man, he beat all my clones. Naruto pouted in distaste. Minato smiled. Sannin isn't just a name you know. He's one of Konoha's strongest shinobi. Naruto sat thoughtfully for a few moments. Orochimaru was a Sannin too, right? Minato nodded. And that old lady Tsunade that we're looking for is a Sannin too, right? Minato grinned. She's also incredibly violent. If you call her old lady, she'd probably pummel you into the ground. Wow. Naruto's voice filled with wonder. I think I just got a little bit more respect for that Erosenin. Forest. There's no way in hell you managed to sneak past our wards and beat my students. Who the hell are you? The boss clone grinned manically. Jiraiya of the Sannin. I am your doom. He flashed forward with incredible speed. This one's better than the rest of them. Jiraiya smiled grimly and flashed a palm into the air. The boss raised a forearm, changing the trajectory of the sage's blow. With one of the sage's arms out of the way, he lashed forward with the same arm that he'd used for the deflecting blow. As the sage reflexively raised his own forearm to block it, the boss thundered a lightning-quick fist toward the man's guts. With quick reflexes, Jiraiya backstepped, avoiding the fist. He readied a palm, and just as his left leg flashed forward to step back in, he felt something hit his guts. Gamma Kenpo? The sage coughed up some blood. That blow was meant to kill. The Iwanin smiled. Jiraiya-sensei. Good to see that I'm still a few steps ahead of you in taijutsu. Minato. Jiraiya frowned, the blood slipping down his chin. This wasn't funny. This wasn't funny at all. The Iwanin shrugged. I enjoyed it. We haven't sparred in 15 years? Yes, but that. The toad sage rolled his eyes and motioned toward the fake bodies. The corpses stood up with matching grins. Wouldn't be a prank otherwise. Naruto grinned. Then, the two corpses disappeared in a puff of smoke. Those were clones too? Jiraiya furrowed his brows. Where the hell is Naruto? The Iwanin smiled. We're all clones. Naruto and I are in my apartment bedroom. Bye. With a puff of smoke, the clone disappeared. I can't believe I lost to his clone. Moments later, the yellow flash appeared to his mentor's left side with his son in tow. Good morning. Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto was jumping excitedly. Best prank ever. You guys. Jiraiya sighed in defeat. He had a sudden thought. Don't tell me you drew a flying thunder god on me. Minato beamed. Take it off. I'll think about it. The sage of toads rolled his eyes. This seal is the ultimate invasion of privacy. Now remove it or I'm taking your son to the red lights district behind your back. Naruto tilted his head. Hey dad, what's the red lights district? Stay out of the red lights district. Minato shook his head as he placed a light touch on his mentor's chest. A ceiling array flared sky blue before receding into his palm. He smiled. If my son becomes like you, I'm going to murder you in your sleep, Jiraiya scoffed. If your son becomes a pervert, I'll swear off women for the rest of my life. Naruto grinned. I'd like to see you do that, Naruto. Minato turned sharply. Hee hee. Just kidding, Dad. Just kidding. Unlike Naruto's company, who traveled 150 kilometers west before heading north, Sasuke went straight northwest toward Showa Town. To no surprise, even though he started 2 days late, he got there at about the same time that they did. Hey boy. We've got a place here for you. Why don't you come here and join us? He turned his eyes and the women squealed. I'm 13. That doesn't matter. You're cute. We'll take you free of charge. The women nodded. Sasuke smirked. And I'll report you for child molestation. TCH. The lead woman spat. Kid doesn't know what he's missing. But the Uchiha was already gone. They're looking for Tsunade. Where the hell is she? He turned to one of the street vendors. Hey, where can I find Senju Tsunade? The man's eyes widened. That woman? If she's here, she's either gambling or drinking. Try one of the bars or gambling arenas. Without a word of thanks, the boy ran off. The vendor rolled his eyes. Young people these days. To Sasuke's surprise, Tsunade turned out in the first bar he walked into. Naruto was already there. It was hard to miss them. Who says I can't be Hokage? Ba-chan, call me that one more time, you little shit, and I'll make you eat my fists. Literally, I'll make you eat my fists if you don't come back to be Hokage, you creepy old hag. The sound of a table being smashed into pieces exploded into the room. The bartender frowned but said nothing. One does not simply mess with Senju Tsunade when she was mad. Tell you what. How about a bet? If you can make me use more than just this finger, the woman held out a pinky, then I'll think about going back with you. Naruto grinned. Too easy. It's a deal, but if you lose, you're leaving and you're not coming back. To his side, the fourth Hokage frowned. Naruto. She's a Sannin, remember? Naruto shook his head. I swear I won't lose. I never go back on my words. Tsunade smiled. Hokage be damned, she liked this kid. He reminded her of her kid brother. A part of her was already hoping she'd lose this bet. Alright kid, meet me outside. I'm going to show you what it means to fight a Sannin. Naruto turned, his eyes widened in surprise. Sasuke? What the hell are you doing here? My brother, Uchiha Itachi the Uchiha frowned. He's coming after you. I know he's coming, and I'm staying with you. Jiraiya sported a matching frown. Kid. This revenge business isn't going to do you any good. Sasuke grit his teeth in anger. He murdered my clan. He killed my mother and father. He deserves to die, and I'm going to be the one to do it. Tsunade ignored their discourse and stomped towards the bar entrance impatiently. Screw this angsty kid. Uzumaki Naruto, are you coming or not? Naruto bit his lips. Jiraiya put a hand to his shoulder and nodded. Go. I'll deal with your friend. Naruto promptly walked out of the bar. Minato turned to his mentor. I'm going with him. I have to make sure she doesn't kill him. Jiraiya nodded. Do what you must. And his student was gone. Sasuke glared at the man who dared to downput his vengeance. It doesn't matter what you say. I'm going to kill my brother and avenge my family. The Sannin smirked. You can't beat him. My Sharingan have fully matured and I know Kakashi's Chidori. Jiraiya shook his head. You can't beat him, Sasuke sneered. You're just trying to get me to not fight him, the sage sighed. What are you going to do after you kill him? What would you have accomplished? I'll have killed the man who slaughtered my clan and murdered my mother and my father. Yes, I know, but what does that accomplish? Even if you succeed, your clan isn't going to come back to life. You'll have achieved nothing of meaning. We punish criminals for murder, don't we? How's this any different? The Uchiha glared stubbornly. Killing him means everything. The Uchiha turned and walked out of the bar. He wasn't going to waste time arguing with an old man about right and wrong. Jiraiya sighed. Itachi had sacrificed so much. Even so, I don't think setting your brother to hatred and vengeance was the right choice. He deserves to know. Outside, Naruto lay bruised in a crumpled heap. Constant repetition of old lady and old hag had finally tilted the female Sannin's patience. With her entire fist, she sent Naruto flying into a wall, promptly losing the bet. Kisame smirked. Look, it's your brother. I know, and they have another Sannin with them too. I know. Itachi deadpanned. Guess we're calling this off then. We are. The Uchiha stood up. Let's go back. The leader needs to hear about this. The shark man frowned. And we didn't even get to do any real fighting. This sucks. What a waste of time. The Uchiha said nothing. No. It wasn't. They turned to leave and were stopped by a sudden flash of light. Kisame felt something touch his back. With lightning-quick reflexes, he spun and cleaved the air, Samehada already in his hands. Huh! He turned back around to see Namake's Minato, the fourth Hokage himself, standing before them. Minato smirked. You forget that I'm a censorin, Hashigaki Kisame. The fourth is a censorin? Itachi frowned inwardly. That wasn't something most people knew about. The yellow flash. You certainly live up to your name. Kisame grinned, pointing his sword forward. Let's see if you're as strong as they say.